should be going live right about now. Last time I checked, everything should be working, at least according to... Actually, I kind of jumped the gun a little bit. It's too late now. Let me zoom this up a little bit, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay. All right, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this should be working. Hey guys, what's up? And I know this is super early in the morning, especially over here. I mean, if you guys are over in the East Coast or in the middle of the country or somewhere else, it's probably later in the day, you know, an early Sunday morning. Over here, it's pretty damn early, like a little after 6. I pretty much got back from work a little while ago. It's part of the reason why I'm speaking so low, because I don't want to wake anybody up. I work nights, so I tend, you know, I'm the vampire of the house, and I don't want to have to wake, you know, people up. I already had a snack to eat, and I'm munching on my pistachio muffin and one of my favorite teas to drink. Hello, Alfonso. What I am drinking is this, and I don't know how well you can see that because of the bright light that I got flashing on it. This stuff, this lavender milk tea, which is one of my favorite treats for myself, is very freaking hard to find, or at least I have a hard time finding it. I don't know what it is. Like, there's 2 Asian markets near me, and they got all types of interesting stuff that I like to drink. You know, like the Itoen iced teas, I get those all the time. All types of really interesting drinks, different types of Asian snacks, different fruits and vegetables that you normally don't get in normal, you know, grocery stores. But they don't have this stuff. I've gotten all other types of weird teas, but I can never find this. Like, I had bumped into this years ago when I had visited my mom back over in New York, where I'm from. And she happened to have had a bunch of this, and I was asking where she get it from. She said, just the Asian store. And then I come back to where I'm living, and I can't find it in mine. So I was forced to have to freaking order this through Amazon. Not fun. But it's the only way I can get it now. I have it, like, you know, pretty much a subscription for this, so every 2 months I get this stuff sent over. And it's really freaking good, especially if you like milk teas and if you like lavender. But again, hard to freaking find. At least I have a hard time finding it. But you didn't come over here to hear me talk about tea. So what I plan on doing with this stream, which is probably going to be like an hour, maybe 2, but I don't want to keep this going on too much because, again, I don't want to wake other people up. And once I hear people moving around, I'm probably going to turn it off, especially since, like I said, I got back home from work. I worked an 11-hour shift, and I'm a little tired. Quite frankly, I really shouldn't be doing this stream. I just felt like it because I haven't done it in a while, but what I really should be doing is getting some rest before the sword class, because Scott, I don't know if you guys know, Scott Rodell has an online sword class, and oh, see you later, Alfonso. It was nice of you to pop in, but I can understand you have to go. He has a sword class on Sundays, and I'm usually doing it in a little less than half an hour. It's going to start, and I really should be just getting some rest and then getting ready to do that class, but I'm not doing it. Bad student, I know, but I'm just tired. I know I don't have enough energy to do that, so I'm probably going to get some sleep, wake up, then do my drills, like watch what they're going to, what was done, because they always record the class, and then if you're part of it, you can, like, look it up afterwards. Like, all the other classes that were done before, there's a library of them, so you can follow along and do it that way. So that's probably what I'm going to be doing today. But I should be either doing that or getting some sleep, but I want to do this instead because there's some stuff that I wanted to do. I wanted to share some stuff with you guys. I haven't done this in a long time. There's some stuff over here that I wanted to show you, and there's some stuff I wanted to talk about. So, and it was like a fun little thing that I wanted to do, so, which we're going to do a little bit later. Take another sip of tea. So, to catch up on some quick nerdy stuff as I'm seeing more and more people coming in, what have I been doing lately? Besides editing, because I got stuff I need to do, as far as putting up some more video reviews, and there's some footage stuff that I have to do. Of course, I've been playing games, because nerd, right? Obviously, I'd gotten Elden Ring. I think I already told you guys that. I've already beaten it, though in the circle of people I know, I'm probably one of the last people to beat it because I was really taking my time with it. But I've beaten it. I'm going through it again with a whole new build. Plus, I'm planning on doing a victory lap, new game plus with it. Love the game. It's probably one of the best games that From Software has come out with. It is not perfect though. I'm not. I mean, I love the game. I love From Software. I love Souls type games. Everybody knows that they're my favorite series of games, and this is, quite frankly, my favorite game of this year and my favorite that they've put out overall. But it ain't perfect. There's problems, and I'm probably going to be doing a video about that if you guys don't mind. Now that's down the line. I thought I'd have it out by now, but time and stuff. Another game I've been playing, and don't kill me, okay? I can explain. Before I mention this, please just hear me out after I say what it is. Another game I've been messing around with is Diablo Immortal. Hear me out. I didn't spend 1 red cent on that game. Okay? I haven't spent 1 red cent, and I refuse to. I have to admit, I can see I'm pretty sure you guys have heard by now the really horrible monetization options that they've put in there. And they are horrible. In fact, they're so horrible. If you want me to, I could later on show you. Like, there's a website you can go to that actually shows you just how much money you're going to end up spending if you want to get the top gear gems in the game, and it's insane. Like, I was messing around with that website a little while ago, and the lowest I was able to figuratively spend was $325 if I was stupid enough to. Yeah, there's no way in hell I'm putting real money in there. The only reason why I'm playing that game is because a few of my friends are playing it. They're not spending any money on it either. I'd have to kill them if they do. But we tend to like playing games with each other, and this was the latest one. And I hate to admit it, the game is fun. It's a little too simplistic for Diablo, and quite frankly, I stopped believing these games were, like, it stopped being Diablo for me ever since Diablo 3. And I've already ranted about it. You guys don't need me to hear me rant about it again unless you really want me to, and then I'll go into it. But yeah, I see these games as like Diablo fan fiction, but they're fun. You know, and I'm, joining with my friends, we're leveling up and all that, but we just refuse to spend any money on it. It's just a way for us to waste time playing games with each other. So I've been spending time with that, and then mostly spending time more with Elden Ring, Payday 2, simply because I'm always playing Payday 2. What else was I messing around with? 20 Minutes Till Dawn. That's an interesting one. It's like a roguelike top-down shooter, almost like a Robotron type shooter, and it's really freaking good. If you're into roguelike type games and you like kind of bullet hellsy sort of dodging type stuff, I recommend you try that one out. And another one you might want to try out if you like that sort of thing is I think it's called Vampire Survivor, which is another dodgy bullet hell sort of like roguelike type of game also. But the interesting thing about that game is you're not actually shooting. I mean, you are, but you aren't. Your attacks are all automatic. You got to concentrate more on dodging all the enemies and the shit coming at you. Yes, I'm going to be cursing. That's just how I am. Or swear words, whatever. But yeah, I've been spending a lot of time with that, 'cause that's a nice little time waster. Spend a few minutes, try to dodge the zombies, get stronger. So that's what I've been doing with my time. And Elden Ring, at the very least, I want to do a couple of videos on, because there's a couple of things about the game that I'm noticing people aren't really saying. Not necessarily about the lore, though. There are certain things about the lore that I've been waiting for some people to talk about, and they haven't really been talking about. But something else that kind of occurred to me about that game is this seems to be the game that Miyazaki has wanted to make for a long time. I know some people have stated that, they're jumping on the open world bandwagon, but at least they're doing it good. Not quite. I honestly think that Miyazaki's been trying to make an open world game since Demon's Souls. And the reason why I think that is because I remember that Demon's Souls was originally supposed to be an Oblivion contender. Remember, Sony had hired these guys to make a game that was going to contend with Oblivion, because that game had taken the world by storm, and they wanted their own Oblivion, and the project was failing, and Miyazaki took it over, and it became Demon's Souls, and then the next one became Dark Souls. And Dark Souls, if you notice, everyone went nuts about the whole interconnectedness of that game. But in hindsight, looking at the way these games were, like first Demon's Souls, then Dark Souls, and then Dark Souls 2, and then Dark Souls 3, and then Bloodborne, and the way they were constantly trying to fine-tune exactly how they wanted the world to be and how interconnected they wanted, and whether they wanted a hub or not, and what worked and what didn't. It just seemed to me like they were trying to find a way to make an open world game that was actually interesting to go through. That's my take on it. I think they've been trying to do this for a while, so... But no one seems to be talking about that, so whatever. Enough of that. Let's get into one of the main things that I wanted to discuss. And one of the main things I wanted to discuss is me covering up a major mistake for a video that was going to come out either today or yesterday, and I screwed it up. Let's just rip off the band-aid, shall we? Take a look at this. This right here. Nice piece, isn't it? Very nice piece. This showed up at my door earlier, well, it's now a new week because it's Sunday, so last week, I guess we're gonna have to say last week. This showed up like maybe 2-3 days after the other sword. You know, this one showed up. Now, this one I knew was coming because I negotiated, ordered it, you know, I was gonna do a video on it and all that type of stuff. This one, I had no idea was coming. It showed up, and I'm like, wait, what? And then my contact with LK is like, oh yeah, by the way, we wanted you to try out this one also, do some stress tests, all that type of stuff. So I'm going to be putting this thing through its paces. But here's the thing. I wanted to do a live unboxing with me doing this one. But I didn't have time. And every time it seemed I had a little bit of time, you know, people were moving around, lots of noise, I couldn't do it. So I was going to do the second best thing, the thing that I normally do when I can't do a live unboxing. And I wasn't going to wait until now to do it. I wanted to do it quickly. I'm like, okay, I'll just pre-record, you know, I'll just record it and then put it up. And I did. And I was editing the footage and everything was awesome. Until I realized that I was giving the wrong information the whole freaking time. So all that footage was wasted. I was annoyed. This is what I mean. This particular sword, if you go to the LKChen site, you will find it listed as the Kijia Yaodou. The Kijia Yaodou, or the General Ki's Waist Dao. Kijia, General Ki, as in Kijiguan. I know I'm butchering that name, but look him up. He's a very famous general from the Ming Dynasty. Yao is in waist, and then Dao, the knife, the one single-edged sword we have here, or saber as we'd like to call it. This model is based on the swords that he preferred his particular troops use. There is another name for this type of Dao or shape of Dao, and it's called a Woyadao. Wo is in the old term that the Chinese use for the Japanese. And the reason why they're calling this a Japanese waist saber is if you look at the profile of the blade, does that look kind of familiar to you? The blade geometry, the way the tip is shaped, does that look kind of familiar? It should, because it is based on, the look of Japanese katana. Doesn't exactly handle like one. This handles like a nice one-handed, saber. Very maneuverable, easily, at least in my opinion, easily maneuverable in one hand. Has a really nice balance to it. By the way, this thing was, I'm really impressed with the improvement to their quality control. LK Chen's quality control has gotten so much better since when I first started reviewing their weapons. Blade is nice and straight, no warping, polish. There's a little bit of scratching here and there, but nothing major. It's, for the most part, the polish is really nice. Sharp as hell. I had tested the edge when I was doing the unboxing, and again, it was just like shaving the paper. It was ridiculous. Just easily slicing through. Grip is nice and comfortable. Wrapping really, really nice and tight. And I know it may look like this kind of square shape on the grip is uncomfortable. I assure you, it is not. This just fits beautifully in my hand. Like, it just really, really nice. But the thing is, the whole time that I was talking about the blade and explaining it and all that good stuff, I kept calling it the Woyado. which technically it's not incorrect. This is a Woyado, but on the website, this particular model is the Kijayado. I'll show you what I mean. Let me put this back in here. Put this on the side for a bit. Stay there. All right, give me a moment. This is going to be a little... Okay, so yeah, you see that in the background there? This is the sword. You can tell it is. I mean, there's a scabbard, there's, you know, hand grip right there. It's all, you know, that yellow color. And you look there, and as you can see, let me just scroll up so it's easier for you to see. Yeah, Kijayado. There it is. That's the sword. But I kept calling it this one. Woyado. As you can see, it has a very similar blade profile because it's based off the same type of sword. There are key differences, though. You have that nice little collar right there protecting the, you know, shrouding the base of the blade. You got a different color and actually a different material for the grip. This one's more of a cloth type of, you know, wrapping for the hand grip, whereas the one that I have here, the Kijayado, it looks like some kind of synthetic leather that they're using for it. It feels really nice and tight, but I could tell the other one is more of a cloth one. The fittings are slightly different. The scabbard's colored different. But the whole freaking time, it didn't occur to me that I was describing the wrong sword. Like, I literally went to this website and I'm like, yeah, this is the sword here. And I think they might have upgraded it because the grip looks different. And I notice they don't have the collar anymore. I don't know. I have no idea what happened to my brain the whole freaking time that I was doing the unboxing. But yeah, there was no way I could put that up because I was giving all types of wrong information about it. I apologize. That's the reason why that video never got up. Again, that video was supposed to have been put up either yesterday or the very latest today, and I just couldn't put that footage up. I mean, yeah, you would have seen, the surprise on my face, and the smile, and I would have been like, yeah, this is awesome. Well, that's out the window now. Pistachio muffin, like I said earlier. I love pistachios. I love muffins. Yes, I'm being uncouth. I am eating during a live stream. I got home from work. I want a snack. Sue me. Don't sue me. I don't have that much money. But anyway. So yeah, it's not this sword. I mean, this one looks really interesting. I might want to talk to Jeffrey about this one. Jeffrey, because he's more into doll, and I think he might have already have handled this one, and I would like to get his opinions on if he noticed any difference in handling between this one and this one right here. But I can tell you right now, just from the dry handling that I've done with this one just feels really nice. I will say that the other one, the Yangling doll, is still my favorite of the curved doll that I have handled from LK Chen. This one is slightly heavier. There's a slightly more of a forward presence to it, but not so much that I feel like this is uncomfortable. This still feels really nice to wield. It still really feels really nice in the hand. And the little bit of extra oomph in the forward balance, and again, it's not, you really have to really pay attention to it when you're holding it to see that there's a bit of a difference, but there's just enough of a difference for me to tell that, yeah, this is definitely this is a military weapon. It's one of the things that I really like about a lot of the LK Chen reproductions or recreations. Like, when they're recreating the military models, you can tell that they're the military models because they tend to be pretty easy to wield, which is what you want if you're mass producing weapons for a squad or an army or whatever. But you can tell that when they hit, they're going to have an impact. They're meant to be easy to use, easy to manipulate, and have a desired destructive effect. And that's the feeling that I get from this. I also find it interesting. Again, you can see the historical influence that Japanese blades had with China and vice versa. There has been a lot of cross-pollination, a lot of cross-cultural referencing going on between the two cultures. And, it's funny how, there's been a lot of emphasis on, oh, they took this from us. The Japanese took this from us. But they were taking from each other back and forth all the time. This is proof of it. So, but this is, again, is their single-handed variant, because, I mean, it's not like the Chinese didn't have two-handed swords. We've seen those. But they really seem to like using one-handed swords, usually paired with some type of shield. Again, could be, reasons for it. It could be cultural preferences. It could also just simply be, the ease of use of just, swinging it with one hand. It's not like that's, not popular. You see the same thing in Europe with arming a lot of soldiers with one-handed weapons rather than just always with two-handed, especially if you're pairing them with a spear, or if it's just a backup weapon and they, I said a spear. I meant a shield. The shield in the left hand, your melee on the right, vice versa, depending on whether you're left or right-handed. But usually these things, and consider this is called a waist dao. So this is a sidearm. This is the thing that you just wear on your waist while you're using some other weapon, usually some type of spear or halberd, something similar to that. And considering that this one happens to be the Kija Yado, I can tell you from the little bit of research I've done with the way he liked to maneuver his troops and the maneuvers and tactics he liked using with them, this weapon was definitely paired with a shield. He liked having certain troops, like he had a certain formation where there were guys with really long spears which were made out of like bamboo stalks, and they would still have the branches there, and they would have like 2 or 3 of those guys to harass enemies, while the guys with the swords and the shields would kind of move in close to finish them off. Really interesting formation. If you're interested in looking it up, I suggest check it out. It was an effective tactic. He used it for years, and was successful with it. But the guys using the one-handed sabers usually ended up having it paired with a shield, whereas the ones with the longer weapons would just have it at their waist in case they lost a longer weapon or got destroyed, and you got to pull that one out and defend yourself, which, again, backup. Similar to how, soldiers these days, you got your rifle, but your pistol is your backup. And interestingly enough, just like, I'm seeing similarities with that, where when you think guns, most of the time people want their pistols, and in the West, we tend to venerate the pistol more than the rifle. I guess you can kind of argue with me on that one, but I noticed that there's usually a little bit more of a romanticizing of the pistol over the rifle, even though the rifle is more useful in a battlefield situation. And it's the same thing with melee weapons, older cold weapons, where, the spear was more useful, but the sword is more romanticized. And that happens to be the sidearm. Interesting how you can, it's the more things change, This is you can quote that Lucas thing, it rhymes. So, I'm sorry I mentioned Lucas, because don't get me started on Star Wars. So yeah, just got that weapon. I am sorry that I wasn't, I might still put the footage up, but just for the guys on Patreon, just so they can see how badly I effed up. But I'm sorry you're not going to get, didn't really get to see me do the unboxing, but at least I'm showing you what the weapon is like. I could talk a little bit more about it, because I just realized that there were a couple of things I didn't mention. The blade on this one happens to be their mono steel version, which I am perfectly fine with. I really think that there is nothing wrong with mono steel. I know we tend to really geek out over folded steel options or sanmei steel options, or things like that, because the pattern is so pretty and we know a lot of work went into it and all that. But there's nothing wrong with a mono steel sword. In fact, in some ways, they might be better for you, especially if you're like a beginner cutter, or you're going to be beating the crap out of your weapon, you're putting it through a lot of heavy use. Mono steel, you don't have to worry about, it accidentally taking a set, or you don't got to worry too much about unless it's a bad heat treat, or a bad temper. But usually, mono steel blades tend to be more resilient overall. They tend to be more resilient, and able to take a little bit more abuse, or dealing with the stress of a bad cut by someone beginning. They tend to handle that a lot better than a lot of folded steel options. And so I don't mind a mono steel sword at all. The polish on this particular mono steel version is really nice, just a nice mirror polish. So I know it's, at least I'm expecting it to be able to handle a little bit of rough treatment. And considering that this was sent to me specifically so I could not just simply test its edge on cutting and, you know, talk about how well it was produced, but I'm supposed to stress test this thing. Not destructive test, mind you, but stress test it. So I'm going to be putting it through some tougher targets. I'm going to, you know, maybe whack it on the side like this a little bit. You know, I'm just going to like see how well the blade does in case of some rougher treatment or some bad, almost beginner type things, just to see how it's going to, you know, stand up to it. I don't want to destroy this thing, though. I don't like destroying swords. I'm not here to destructive test weapons. Because, I mean, let's put it this way. I like when I'm reviewing these to use them within the parameters of a responsible sword owner. If you're somebody who's trying to hack through cinder blocks with these things, you're not a responsible sword owner. Unless you're doing it specifically to see just how tough they are. I want to test them to see how well they put up with normal use. And if during normal use, I see problems like the edge breaking or fittings falling apart, or, you know, the blade suddenly falling off, you know, the hilt, yeah, we got problems. Because if it's falling apart in normal use, that's unacceptable. Falling apart during a destructive test, that's sort of, you know, to be expected. With certain caveats. And here's another apology that I have to put up. One of my last videos, I was talking about the swords that I would recommend. And right after I put that video up, somebody brought to my attention the fact that the Song Dao, I think it was the Song Han Dao, that I had recommended, because I said the people who like a nice big beefy chopper might be interested in that one. And then someone brought to my attention that there was a destructive test that was done on it, and there was a video done. I am regretting that I don't remember that guy's name right now. But the guy who did the testing was doing, like, he was doing a destructive test on it, but before, he wasn't even getting to the really destructive parts yet. He was just, like, testing to see how well it could deal with it if you're, like, whacking it, you know, by the side of the blade on a couple of hard targets. And the blade just broke right off, right at the base. Right where it, you know, comes out from the handguard. And he's like, that's not good. And he took a good look and saw that not only was the tang a little too thin there for the type of blade, that the type of saber that it was, but also apparently they tried to weld it to the handguard to kind of make it's like, I guess they kind of knew that the design of it was going to be a little bit too stressful for this part, so they tried to reinforce it, and the reinforcement didn't work. So I'm going to have to retract recommending that Song Dao until they get that fixed. Now, granted, that video was done a while ago. I have no idea if they've improved it since then. I know that LK Chen is known for, you know, taking criticism, accepting criticism, and then improving their products based on what they see and what reviewers tell them. So I'm willing to bet that at least there's been some thought put into trying to improve it, but whether they've done it or not, I do not know. I am going to find out, and I need to talk to my contact about that. But until then, I would say be careful if you're considering getting the Song Han Dao. So I'm probably, let me give you the exact name of it so that you don't. Yeah, it's the Song Han Dao. It is, let me just shrink my window again. This one. Yeah, like there seems to be some structural problems with, give me a moment, because I just realized you can't even see my cursor, can you? This is a great live stream. I'm doing everything perfect. Let's see here. Hit OK on that. And everything just went black. What the hell? This is not... I am disappointed. Click. There we go. Okay, there it is. So can you see my... You can't. God damn it. Okay, so you know what? Let's just pretend you can see it. Look at the base of the damn blade. Where the handguard is. Around there seems to be kind of some type of structural problems with it. So, yeah, until they get that fixed, be careful. I'm going to keep asking them, find out if they're, you know, found some way to deal with that problem. But until then, be careful with this one. So, to get back to this one here, which so far I'm not seeing any structural problems with it. All the fittings are tight, both the fittings on the sword itself, or the saber, and the scabbard. Scabbard happens to be covered with that same kind of faux leather that they're starting to put on their other swords, like the Yanling doll and the Republican, it was called the Snowy Peak or the Snow Peak. That same kind of material that they're wrapping it with, and I applaud that because I think it looks pretty good and it feels pretty nice. The fittings on the scabbard are also really nice and very similar to the one on the Yanling, but more simple looking. Like if you look at this one, you can see that they're, you know, they do just enough to get the job done, which is what I would expect from a weapon that is based off of a model that's supposed to just simply go to a foot soldier. You're not giving them something fancy schmancy, you're giving them something effective and will work. And that's what I'm getting from this. It is based off of a model that, you know, it is based off of an existing piece, which also had very simple designs on it. I'm actually going to scroll down a little bit. Well, first I need to go back to the right page. It would help if I did that. It would also help if I would not hide the page. So we're just going to go over here. And we're going to go, yeah, that's General Kijiguan, by the way. And I'm trying to see if they're showing the old piece that it's based on. Here we go. Not exactly the same, but pretty similar. The wrapping obviously is a bit different. Every time I hover it makes it darker. I'm sorry about that. But you can see that there was a cord wrap. You can see that there was like iron fittings at the very least. These are blued steel fittings, so nice and tough. Yeah, the blade, everything looks very similar. You can tell they did their best to, you know, to recreate it. And as you can see with the fittings here, at least the fittings on the sword, nothing fancy. It's just, you know, decent steel fittings to get the job done. And on this particular piece here, same thing. You can tell it's like pretty much recreated. And even though it doesn't seem to have an existing scabbard, the scabbard happens to have the same aesthetic. Simple, gets the job done. So yeah, I'm going to have a lot of fun. I already know that I'm going to be cutting up certain targets. I'm going to be trying to, I have a couple of old mats that I want to try to use this on. I have, of course, some bottles. And then there's my cutting stand, which also goes into another reason why I'm a little behind on, not a little, I am behind, very behind on my reviews. My cutting stand's broken. I didn't do it. I don't know why. But one of the legs on my cutting stand just freaking snapped off. I'm gonna blame it on myself anyway. It's not like I was swinging it around like a baseball bat. It's just I'm thinking because I constantly kept leaving it outside in the back, it might have just gotten weather worn. But yeah, one of the legs is off, and the last couple of reviews I did, I was actually doing it with that missing leg, but it just causes too many problems, especially since the hill that I test this on is not exactly level. So it's always a pain in the ass trying to keep that thing from leaning or falling over, you know, especially when there's certain heavy things on top of it. So it was a pain. And it's just been getting kind of worn down anyway, so I'm just building myself another stand. I need to go out, get the wood, and just put a new stand together and be done with that. But that means that old stand is now going to take a beating from that saber over there. that doll. The doll, I'm going to start hacking into the side of the wood. I think that's a decent stress test. Yeah, I don't recommend you swing at freaking 2 and 4x4s with a sword. That's not really good, but you want to talk about stress tests. There you go. So there's that. Let's see. I'm not really getting that many questions, but it's not like I said, this is a Q&A. So, well, Grant McGovern's asking, are the tassels at the bottom of the handle disruptive enough that you'd remove them in actual combat? Yes and no. This here, by the way, this is more of a strap than a tassel. This, to be honest, this is short enough so that it doesn't really get in my way, but something like this, where you don't really see it all that decorative, was meant more to kind of like put over your wrist. And usually it's tied, so you would, like, you know, just kind of put that there, and then you hold it here, and then just in case you drop it or whatever, it didn't fall that far because you got this wrapped around your wrist, and it's out the way, it's not swinging around, there you go. And the same thing can be seen, put this over here, with this sucker right here. As you can see, this one actually is tied, and so if I wanted to, I could just, you know, put my freaking big ass mitt on there, and then when I pull the thing out, yeah, you know, it's strapped so that in case I drop it or something, there we go. And just pick it, you know, just simply get it back in your hand and do what you got to do, you know. So when it's just this short and it's made to just be this practical, yeah, it's fine. It doesn't get in the way. Now, once you start talking about those overly decorative ones, the ones with the tassels, especially the ones that are really freaking long, like, you know, like the tassels, like just about as long as the blade, yeah, those get in the freaking way. Now, I do know that there are Chinese forms and drills where those tassels are purposefully that long to train you to use the sword in a particular way. Because I might as well show it. Hold on. It's kind of dark though, so you're probably not going to be able to see it. But hold on for a sec. There we go. And I mean, I don't really have. I haven't had a sword with a long tassel in a very long time, and I don't really have any tassels to put on here. So you're guessing you're gonna have to use your imagination here. But the swords with the really long tassels, they usually when the ones I see with the really long tassels, they tend not to have them threaded through the handle itself or in the middle, like I tend to see with these. They tend to put them way at the end. They really want to accentuate, you know, the tassels swinging around. And when they're really, really long, and yet they still want you to use them. I mean, granted, when you just want to use it normally, as you can see, this is already flopping around, even this short. Now, granted, because this is not the decorative one, and because it doesn't have, you know, the big, you know, bushy, you know, floppy stuff around, it's not getting in the way when I swing it around, right? I can still pretty much do my cuts, and I'm fine. But imagine you got that long one now flopping around, just simply doing that. You see how this just whipped? Yeah, that's going to get in the way. But there's a training method where they purposefully put that there so that when you swing it, you notice how it didn't get in the way then? Did you see that? Like if you're just simply swinging it normal like that, then now it's there. But when you start swinging it in a certain manner, now if you notice it's not, well, that kind of messed it up there because I don't really train at that method very well, but I know you're supposed to, you notice it just stayed relatively still, or when it's moving, it's not getting in the way. Because what you're supposed to do with the tassel, at least the really long ones, are trying to train you to do, it's to maneuver the handle in a way so that it's following your body movements. That's the best way I can describe it. You're not swinging so that the blade leads. You're swinging more so that the pommel leads. Does that make any sense? Like let's say if I'm trying to cut the dude. Normally, other sword styles, even saber styles, you just hack, right? That's all you do. But the problem is when you're doing that, this is going to whip around, and then if there's a tassel there, it gets in your way, you do that, then you get killed. But if instead of just simply cutting like that, I cut like that, same cut, but notice I led with this. So now this didn't get in the way. It's teaching you to slice, not just hack. And considering that Chinese swordsmanship, they don't really want you to hack with this particular weapon. They want you to use it in a more graceful manner. So you're going to be using the length of the blade to slice into them. You're kind of like with it rather than just with it. That's what it's trying to train you to do. And how you do that is you lead more with the handle. You lead more with the pommel. You don't just with it. So I hope that answered the question. It's like yes and no. It does get in the way. And to be perfectly honest, if you look at historical examples or if you look at like old pictures and stuff like that, you will see that the ones that were used for self-protection and battle and all that didn't have the tassel. The decorative ones did, like the scholar ones, the ones that they just, this is my status symbol. Then you had to decorate it with all types of crazy stuff because they usually weren't expecting to use the damn thing. But they later on turned it into a decent training tool. And I think it was pretty smart doing it that way. But again, those are the really long tassels. There are certain other ones that are not that long. And I'm pretty sure you've seen it. Like, you know, it only comes up to like maybe at the longest or biggest halfway down the sword, or maybe even shorter than that. those are a bit annoying, but they don't really get in the way all that much. Like, they're not going to, like, tangle up and you're like, doing this, and then you get killed. You don't have to worry about that. So, hope that answers that question. I'm going to turn off that light again because this looks weird. All right, back to ghost story form. So let's see what you were saying. And before I go into the other thing I wanted to do, which was also the reason why I wanted to do this live stream, because I thought it would be kind of fun. Let's see. Have you felt a difference in handling between different blade constructions, i.e. sanmei, monosteel, etc.? That's from Ibi-chan. To be honest, okay, I was going to say not really, and I still stand by that. Actually, you know what? I'm going to turn the light on. The upper light is fading now, so now I'm looking a little, it's getting darker, so I'm going to answer your question. Let me just turn the damn light back on. Again, professional streamer! Grumpy old man, grumpy. Okay, so back to this. Here's the thing that I've noticed. And it's kind of funny because now I'm holding a Sanmei one right here. In hindsight, it would have been better if I brought some of the other gen so I can really tell you. When I'm holding this, it doesn't really feel all that different. But I will say that this one feels slightly heavier than some of the other ones they have. Like the Republican era gen that they have, by the way, the Snowy Peak, that one feels like ridiculously light, even though it's longer than this one. And this one, I'm not going to say feels substantially heavier because it's not substantially heavier, but there is more of a weight to it. But I'm not surprised that there's a bit more of a weight to it because one, the blade's slightly thicker. Two, it is wider. And three, it's based off a design from the Ming Dynasty. Huh? What? Explain. I'm sure you guys already know that there was a period of time, a very long period of time, when the gen was no longer used on the battlefield. It was mostly a status symbol for nobility, for the illiteri. Like the main period of time that you saw the gen being like used constantly on the battlefield was during the Han Dynasty. And even during the Han Dynasty, toward the late end of it, they're like, you know what? Dao more effective. Let's switch over to that. And that pretty much remained all the way up until you reach about to around the Ming Dynasty. I've heard some people say that you also saw some of this during the Song Dynasty, but I haven't really seen that much evidence to support that. There's probably something I missed. But as far as I've seen, the Jian was no longer a battlefield weapon after the, during from the late Han Dynasty onwards. It was being supplanted by the Dao. Interestingly enough, the Dao stayed straight all the way up until you start getting into the Song, late Song, getting into the Ming. That's when they started getting more curved. Not too deeply a curve, but still, that kind of graceful curve, like what you see with the Woya Dao, Yanling Dao, Luya, I keep mixing up my names. I'm just going to say the English versions of them, though. The Willow Leaf Saber, Oxtail Sabers, those, you start seeing that kind of curve. But up until a certain point, all the Dao was straight, which makes me think that for a while, Jian and Dao were sort of being used in a similar manner. And then as the Dao started becoming more and more curved, and you start kind of changing a little bit how it's used, because now you can put your hand on the back, you can do the wraps with it without having to worry about hurting yourself, that sort of thing. So you start seeing a delineation in technique. Thing is, when the Ming were kind of coming back, because the dynasty before the Ming Dynasty to them it was like a return to form. The Han Chinese had kind of reconquered their land again. This is a very, very abridged version of Chinese history. There's many different times when you had the Han Dynasty, which of course was ruled by Han Chinese, but then you had other dynasties where people who were not ethnically Han were ruling. When the Ming Dynasty took over, that was the time period where the Han Chinese had taken over again. And something that you tend to see in a lot of cultures where a certain cultural power regains power, they want to do things where they sort of kind of reclaim the past, or they try to okay, we're bringing things back to the way we used to do it. So they started glorifying certain aspects of the past. And one of the things they were kind of bringing back was certain aesthetics of the Han Dynasty. And one of the things about the Han Dynasty was the Jian. So for centuries, the weapon had been supplanted, at least on the battlefield, by the Dao. Jian was still being used by civilians, by local militia people, villagers. The illiterati were using it as a symbol, but it wasn't a weapon that was straight up used on the battlefield. Until the Ming Dynasty, where for a brief period of time during the Ming Dynasty, they started using these on the battlefield again. But you need to build these things to deal with the battlefield. So they weren't going to be kind of these dainty weapons. They needed some oomph to them. So for them to be able to kind of compete and, stand toe-to-toe with the Dao, which was a slightly heavier weapon. I mean, they're not crowbars, but they're still a bit more of, bit more blade presence there, a bit more mass going through your target, a bit heavier in the swing. They had to start making these things a little bit beefier for, the guys using it to stand up against them. So you're going to notice, and I've had people who've gotten their hands on Ming Dynasty Antique Jian, as well as those who've looked at the history of it. They've all told me the same thing. Ming Dynasty Jian tend to be a bit heavier than a lot of their counterparts. So this one, I'm looking at it, I'm seeing the kind of nice wide blade. I'm seeing it somewhat thicker than, not too much thicker, but just thick enough so they're like, okay, this is substantive. So that's why this one seems to have a bit more blade presence. So what the hell does that have to do with the blade construction? As, EB-chan had been asking. Well, this one happens to be Sanmei construction. So you'd be thinking, well, this one does feel heavier, and it's got 3 bits of steel, 3 types, the 3 plates of steel that, fuse together to make the beautiful pattern. That must be what's making it heavier, right? No, because mass is mass. Okay, material is material. If this was made out of monosteel, but the exact same amount of steel used, it's going to feel the same way. Right? Mass is mass. Steel is steel. Material is material. Whether it's folded or not doesn't really factor into the weight of it or the feel of it. Again, how it's constructed, weight distribution, the fittings on the blade, that's what's really going to determine how it's going to feel in the hand afterwards. All these different types of construction, whether you're dealing with monosteel, whether you're dealing with folded steel, whether you're dealing with Sanmei construction or different types of lamination, those things were done to, basically these different ways of forging steel for weapons was a way that they had to solve problems. The problem wasn't necessarily on the weight of the sword or the handling of the sword. It was more about how resilient can we make the blade and how sharp can the edge be and how long can it retain that edge. There's always this balancing act that you're doing between resiliency and hardness when it comes to making a sword. And the whole things like Sanmei construction, differential hardening, the way you heat treat, all these things are ways to try to find a way to coming up with a sword that can be both resilient or tough and hard enough to have a sharp edge. Sanmei construction is one of the ways to solve those problems because you're dealing with one hard but somewhat brittle type of steel that can hold the edge sandwiched between 2 softer bits of steel that can handle the shock of impact, making it more resilient. That's one way to handle it. Another way to handle it is to use a really good type of pure mono steel that is just going to be hard but resilient all the way through. In modern days, we have steels that I think people in the past would probably wish they could get their freaking hands on. I'm willing to bet money, even though there's no way in hell we'd be able to do this, but if we somehow can get a time machine and go back in time with the steels we're using now, sword makers over there would be going nuts. Because they had to deal with all types of impurities and all this other type of crap just to be able to make swords. And that's part of the reason. That's one of the main reasons why you have folded steel in the first place. You were folding it to hammer the impurities out. Nowadays, we're working with all sorts of pure steels. You don't need to fold them anymore. It's just an aesthetic thing. And again, all these different ways of forging it, whether you do lamination, Sanmei, folded, whatever, doesn't really have anything to do with the weight or the feel or the handling of it. It's more to do with solving the problem of resiliency versus hardness. Making it hard enough to hold an edge, but at the same time making it resilient enough so it's not brittle. So that's what that's all about. Okay, extra see mono steel, pattern steel, and satme. Yeah, when you hit the pommel or cut with it. Yeah, that's the other thing. There is also that, and this is another reason why I think that mono steel overall is a better steel for beginners to use, because folded steel and especially laminated steel, if you don't know what you're doing, if your cuts are bad, if you're not good at edge alignment yet, you may find out some ugly things start happening to your blade. Ask anybody who has ever seen what happens in a Japanese sword competition where they're using properly, like traditionally forged katana, and there's a student who doesn't really know what he's doing trying to cut through a tatami mat. You get to see some rather scary things happen to those blades. Maybe they won't necessarily snap, though I have seen that happen on footage. But you'll see them take a set. You'll see them bend. Folded steel is known for that. Differentially hardened steel is known for that. Mono steel, not so much. Mono steel tends to be a lot more resilient. And especially with some of our modern versions of them, I happen to be really partial to 9260. I think that's a really good steel for just an overall, good resilient blade that can hold an edge and take a beating. One of the gen I have, the one that I got from Sino Sword, has that blade. It's still cutting. I've cut a lot with that freaking thing. That edge is still there, still going strong. And by the way, I don't resharpen these things. I haven't need to. I haven't had a need to at all. I know sooner or later I'm going to have to start, getting out the sharpening stones, but I haven't had to touch the edges on any of these at all. And they're still cutting. Even the very first one that I ever reviewed way back, that old Han Dynasty gen, which now realizing is more of like a fantasy Han sword, but I still love the design. That old one, I think that was made out of 1092 steel or 1090 steel. It'll come to me. Still works, still cuts. Haven't had to retouch that one. So again, when you deal with a good heat treat, good temper, they know what they're doing, you can have a really good blade. It doesn't have to be folded. That one, by the way, wasn't folded. So, now that we're really getting deep into the whole sword talk, we can go into the other fun thing that I wanted to do before I cut this off. I don't get these sorts of questions or requests as often as I used to, but I still get them every now and then, which is like, what type of sword, what are you into? What do you think is a really good sword? I saw this sword on this website. Do you think it's good? I used to get like constant DMs and emails like, I just saw this sword on this website and I want to, do you think it's good? What do you think? And I'm sitting over here like, I don't know. I don't have it in my hands. I don't even be able to tell. All right. But I thought, it hit me a couple of nights ago. I'm like, because I was looking at some pictures of swords, and the reason why, what's up, Joel? The reason why is because there's a video I wanted to do where I kind of talk about what I would consider to be my ideal sword, because I do have an ideal. And I've been meaning to do a video on my ideal for a while now. Like, if I ever had the chance to just go to someone and say, I want you to make me this. Like, what would be if I had to throw all the other swords I have away, and by doing that, they're like, okay, you get rid of everything else, but in return, you get the one sword you've always wanted made exactly the way you want. What would it be? There's a model I have in mind. There's a sword I have in mind. And I wanted to do a video on that, but I started looking online to, look at pictures so I can kind of construct it. With on paint.net, like, okay, with this blade and this fitting and that. And as I'm looking at all these different sites, it's occurred to me that I'm looking at swords where I'm like, that one doesn't look too bad. If I had the money, I might pick that one. Oh, that is crap. I don't know why the hell it would spend that. And it occurred to me that, hey, it would be kind of cool if I did a video on it where I start like, this is what I look for in swords. So let's start live. What we're going to do is I'm going to go to a couple of websites and I'm going to show you the things that when I look at a sword, what would make me want to click on the buy button and what makes me want to point and laugh. So there's a couple of websites I saw with some rather interesting looking pieces, and we're going to go through them. as soon as I get the freaking links that I... Okay, so right here, I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click on this. And we are going to shrink this window down. Hopefully I'm not too small here. I'm going to click this window down, and we are going to start looking at swords, and I'm going to show you what... Now, well, granted, some of the things I'm going to say are objective. They're based on my own tastes. Some stuff is going to be objective. Some stuff is going to be... Well, okay, I just messed up what I was going to say. Some stuff is going to be straight up objective. It's not going to be my opinion. It's going to this is what you should look for. This is what should make you run. But other stuff is going to be subjective based on my own taste. Some stuff I'm going to be like, I just think that one's ugly. And you might look at it and go, that's awesome. I'm not saying my tastes are better than yours. But when something is straight up where, oh, that is crap, I will definitely tell you. So let's go here. Oh, and just because I'm going to these websites doesn't necessarily mean I'm endorsing them. There are 3 particular sites that I've clicked on over here, and I know nothing about these guys. So I can't tell you if they're good or not. I wish I could, but I can't. So all I'm doing is I'm just pretending that, let's just say I'm looking online, I'm looking for something decent, and I'm not looking at Cult of Athena, though I might as well put that one up. Cult of Athena has a whole lot of stuff. Where are you? So we'll probably look at that one later. Actually, interestingly enough, where's the Chinese section? I know they had a Chinese section here because I saw it earlier. What the hell? Here we go. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to start looking. So hopefully you guys can see this pretty well. So, oh yeah, though you missed... Dark Chris, you missed when I talked about that doll with the orange wrap. I was talking about it because I got it here. I'm going to be reviewing this one soon. It came in a few days ago. Later on when the stream is over, if you want to go back and look at the what I said earlier, I went into how it got over here and how I completely screwed up the unboxing and, the things about that sort. So when this is done, you can go check it out. Anyway, so I'm looking through here, and I'm going to tell you the first thing that comes to my mind as I'm just scrolling down. I haven't even picked a sword yet. I'm just scrolling down, and the first thing that pops in my head is, man, there's so many copycats. God, there's so many copycats. How often are we going to see this? How often are we going to see this? I've been seeing this for years now. They just keep on copying this. And you know what really... Look at how many... what should you call, showbiz, for lack of a better term. Showbiz, Hollywoodish tropes, even though it's not Hollywood. Look, you got the gap in the middle like the sword from Hero. And it's wide like the sword from Hero. And it's got that Han Dynasty handguard, which is now you're seeing it pretty much everywhere. And you got the round grip that's trying to look ancient, and of course, since it's round, that means your edge alignment's going to be a little bit tough unless you know what you're doing. They put a tassel at the end of it, which cracks me up because Han Dynasty Gen did not have tassels. See, I look at this, and the thing that pops in my head is gaudy. I would not get this. I wouldn't. Not even as a wall hanger. I would not touch this. And I mean, who knows? The blade might be constructed really well, for all I know. The fittings might be nice and tight. There might be some decent quality here, but well, actually, this doesn't really fit me with much confidence. But there's just something about the way this brass here looks a little cheap to me. But I could be, again, this is my own subjective tastes here. But there's just something about this that just says gaudy, and I'm just like, nah, I wouldn't bother with this. If somebody sent me this link through a DM, hey, do you think I'm looking for a sword? Do you think this is a good one? No. Maybe as a wall hanger. And the sad thing is, it might be decent. I mean, it's 1060 steel, which tells me it's like a mid, it's not high carbon. This is more like, well, really mid carbon, low carbon is more like the 1045, 1050. 1060 is where you start getting to not bad. And depending on the heat treat, it could be a nice beater. But that being said, when I see the blade and I see this, when I see that, and I see the, you know, kind of marketing, you know, type of, this was in a movie, so it's going to be pretty cool. Like, no. And also it's going for like $235. I also find that kind of suspect. Yeah, so that's a type of one where I'm going to be like, no way. In fact, a lot of these, the 1060s, you got to be careful. 1060 can either be really cool, it could be really good, or it can be absolutely horrible. It all depends on the heat treat and the forging. Here's another one. Now this one's going for $569, but it's being made out of 1095. So it was 1095. 1095 is a pretty good steel, but it's a hard steel to work with. This one can easily shatter on you during the heat treat or crack if you did it wrong. You got to be really careful at 1095, from what I've seen. And I can tell right away this one is based off of a Ming Dynasty design. There's a certain like Emperor Yongle type of sword. You guys probably recognize it. I believe Skull has a version of this, if I remember correctly. I need to ask him, but I'm pretty sure he has kind of like a reproduction of this Ming Dynasty Jin, which was an emperor supposedly had. But what's cracking me up is because once again I'm seeing like a mix of things. That particular sword did not have a blade like this, like last time I checked. This particular blade geometry I don't think was on the original that this is supposed to be based off of. Right? And I mean, again, you got the typical tassel. By the way, this is the tassel I was talking about where it's not that long. So you can sort of get away with using this without it tangling in your hand, but it would still be kind of a nuisance, especially if you're a beginner. Just rip that off. But it could be a good trainer to train you how to, again, do the slicing motions with it. But yeah, I look at this and I'm just like, if I was looking for something that was supposed to be kind of like a historical reproduction, this to me has a little, like the blade and the hand grip don't really match. The double groove thing there, I could be wrong. And I'm pretty sure there's going to be somebody later on who's going to be like, you're an idiot. Look at this Ming one. Look at this Ming one. Look at that. And then, like, see, you got that freaking double groove right there. You don't know what you're talking about. And if they do, I will concede the fact. I'm not a complete expert on all things historical Jin. I do have some gaps in the research that I've done, but as far as I can tell, I don't remember seeing this kind of blade geometry on a Ming Jin. Like, this looks more like a modern interpretation of some of the blade designs you saw during the Han Dynasty, which has gotten very popular nowadays. And by the way, you had those interesting blade shapes because before they weren't working with steel, they were working with, what was it, bronze? And you had to kind of do these things to help lighten the metal. You don't really have to do that with steel anymore, though we still do depending on the length of the blade, but I don't want to get into that. This is one of those swords where I'm like, okay, if you don't care too much about historical accuracy, maybe. The 569 is pretty damn steep for a sword that seems to want to dazzle you more with its looks than actually tell you that, oh, it's awesome. And again, it's just something about it tells me, but somebody else might like it, and it might not be bad. Maybe. I don't know. Let's look at this one. So this one is, they're calling it a broadsword, which amuses the hell out of me. It would be more accurate to call it a saber. This is a dull. This one's going for $350, 1060 steel. Again, 1060, not a bad steel. It's just very consistent. In fact, Matthew Jensen had put up in the chat that it tends to be one of the most consistent steels. Yeah, it is. They use it for just about everything. I've seen it used for European swords. I've used it for katanas, different type of Chinese swords. As long as the guy who's forging it knows what he's doing, he's giving it a good heat treat, 1060 is great. In fact, some of the toughest swords I've ever handled were made from 1060. Ronin Katana has a line of swords called their Dojo Pros. Those things are tanks. They really can take a beating. 1060 steel. If you know what you're doing, you can make some really good stuff out of it. But this one's supposed to be 1060. It's a saber, so right away I know it was built for cutting. Usually sabers tend to be built for cutting. And right away, this part right here, I'm trying not to laugh because I could tell right away. I talked about this a bit in the video where I was talking about trends in Chinese swords, how so many fittings are mass produced and like they just factory make them, and then some sword makers will just kind of like, all right, grab this piece, put this blade, put it together, boom, there you go. It's not like one person sitting there forging the sword and making each piece. No, everything is like like a freaking assembly line. This sword screams assembly line. The blade was probably made in one place, the fittings were probably made in another, and then it, put the thing together, because I have seen this everywhere. I do like that collar. Just letting you know, I do like the collar, but I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it on Dian, on Dao, on katanas, all of them, of course, production line swords. I've seen them everywhere. So the minute I see this, I know for a fact this is not exactly what you call a family heirloom blade. That being said, it don't look half bad. Like, if you wanted a decent looking chopper, maybe. Again, I would need to know something more about who made this. I would like to know more about the factory or forge that made the blade and put this thing together for me to go, yeah, I want that. But it seems pretty decently put together. And one thing I do notice is that when it comes to swords from Chinese factories, the Dao tend, like if you're just simply looking for a cutter, the Dao tend to be a bit more consistently well made than the Gen. It's a weird thing in the market. It took them a while to start making Gen worth a damn. Long while. And that's a whole other video in itself if you want me to get into that. But yeah, $350 for that, if I was searching for Dao, that might make it on my list. Maybe not on the top of my list, but because I'm looking at, the overall look of the blade. The aesthetics are more or less okay. I do like the grip. I'm going to click back on that. I love this wrapping on Chinese swords. This particular wrap on the grip, I absolutely love it. I've been trying to learn how to do that myself because I'm planning on redoing a couple of the swords I have, and I want to use this particular design on there. I really want to use this pattern when I'm putting it together, so that does make it attractive. Well, I've seen it on Dao before. It's a little bit, I've seen it's more commonly used on Gen, but I've seen it on Dao. I'm going to click on that one more time because I want to see any close-ups on the blade. This looks like a nice little cleaver, don't you think? And again, yeah, they don't even match. Look at this. They don't even match. This is what I mean. This is what I mean. I can tell this is mass-produced. The thing... It's not just that the designs don't match. The brass is even... Yeah. Sheesh. I was about to say asking $350 for this is too much, but that's not true. Because I've seen mass-produced swords with the same thing there. And it's a fair enough price. I've seen Katana go for that with the same type of mass-produced fitting, so... It ain't bad. I'm kicking it around a little bit too much. It's not bad. Okay, here we go. The dime a dozen Hanwu Gens that you see every freaking where. Everywhere. Everybody and their mother has got a version of this sword now. And I hate myself for loving them. This is my favorite design. I know it's not exactly historically accurate. I know they are like mass produced like crazy. You could probably walk in a candy store and find one of these hanging on the wall. And I'm just looking at seeing all the like freaking idiosyncrasies, all the anachronisms that they threw on this. Like the metal collar here, which was not on any Han Dynasty scabbards whatsoever. I could tell just by looking at the blade that this thing is going to be a bit heavier than it should be. So you better use this in two hands instead of just one, despite the fact that Han Dynasty Gen were super long, but you could still wield them effectively in one hand to a certain point. But I love this design. When I first saw it back in 2003, 2004, around that age, I fell in love with it immediately, and I still love it. In fact, I'm just going to give you guys a preview right now before I finally talk about my personal sword that I want, like my perfectly designed sword, my wish sword. It's based on this design. My wish sword is going to be this, just better. But yeah, this is so mass produced. They don't even have the. See, that's a solid piece of brass, and that's another thing that cracks me up. The original really the original version of this didn't exist. What I mean by the original version is the first contemporary one, the first one modern made with this overall aesthetic. This grip wasn't solid. It was like this. I'm in the small freaking square, so you can't really tell. So I'm gonna just enlarge this for a second, and then we'll get back to. God damn it! Don't piss me off. Oh, that's why my cursor didn't even go over here. Ugh. Okay, so I'm gonna lift this up for a second. You see how you got the holes? Like you see, like this thing is not just one solid. The hand grip, the hand guard, hand grip. See how the hand guard? It's not just one solid piece of brass. I mean, well, it is, but there's holes in there. There's like, negative space in there. It's beautifully, intricately carved so that you can actually look through the grip. The Hanwu Jian that I really like so much also have that feature where you can look through it, right? But these newer ones being made, they're not doing that because that costs more to do. To manufacture them that way, to make the brass fittings that way, it costs a bit more. So it's a lot more cost effective just to make it solid brass and just add different designs. So now this one, they got, the whole bird phoenix motif. I hesitate to say phoenix because, to be perfectly honest, the Chinese phoenix is not really a phoenix, but that's a whole other video for another time. It's a beautiful design. Don't get me wrong. I love that design on it. It's great. But it cracks me up because I know it's not exactly what they're trying to copy. They put a dragon on here now instead of the tiger motif that was on the original one. Oh, wait a minute. Okay. This just went up a couple of points for me. And the reason why it went up a couple of points is because they're putting the four... I forgot the name. There's a specific name for these creatures. I'm just going to call them the four divine creatures. Like they represent like the four different directions and the four cardinal collections, and they're the legendary mythical creatures. It's the red phoenix, the azure dragon, the white tiger, the black tortoise, and even that they're Western names for these Chinese creatures, and the Chinese creatures it's different. They're not exactly the same, but you know what I mean. Like you have the phoenix motif there, right? You got the dragon right there, right? Still a dragon, which I have to admit that is a beautiful looking sword, but I can tell with that octagonal blade design, and since they didn't hollow out this area or sink it in too much, this blade's gonna have some weight to it. There's the black tortoise, and there's the white tiger. So it's got that, the four celestial mythical creatures on it, and I love that. I do love, there's some swords I've seen where they put those creatures on there, and they always do it in a really beautiful way. If I ever own a sword like that, I'm calling it the celestial, and I think it's cool. What would make the sword even cooler? If they put the 7-star design on the blade as well, which is what I would want for my dream sword. But yeah, this, I wouldn't fault somebody for getting, but what would keep me from clicking the add to cart button? One, they're asking $590 for that. Man, you can get this. I'm willing to bet you money you can probably get the same thing for $300, maybe a little less. $590 for that? Get the fuck out of here. No. Look at the weight, 2 kilograms. I told you it was gonna be a little too heavy. No, but I will admit it looks pretty. What else can we click on? I want to look at stuff that stands out. Like I'm like, Again, the so-called big thick. I'm not a fan of these. Like I'm just gonna tell you right now, when it comes to Gen, the big wide, big heavy, the war one, I am not a fan. Never have been. And for anybody who's like, why not? It's awesome, big war. It's not the style I was trained in. And to be perfectly honest, if you're training in Chinese martial arts and you're doing Gen fighting, it's not the style you're trained in either. It ain't. Maybe they'll make a nice training sword for you because the thing is going to be a big freaking heavy sharpened piece of steel for you to swing around to strengthen your forearms and your wrists. But you ain't fighting with that thing for long. And they're not with the style you're training in, because the style you're training in doesn't use swords like that. They're too heavy. The swords I'm gonna be brutally honest with you guys. If you're training in any Chinese sword art today that uses the Jian, your form was designed to use swords from the late Ming into the Qing into the Republican era period, and most likely just the Republican era period, because that's when the swords really started getting light. Sorry. I hate to break it to you. You most likely are not training in the sword that makes you the super powerful god warrior of the battlefield, especially if you're training in Jian. Sorry, no. You're gonna have to really dig deep to be able to use something like that. So just for that alone, and also simply because it's just not my personal aesthetic, yeah, something like this, ain't interested in. I didn't train in Chinese martial arts to emulate Conan, even though I really love Conan, but it's a whole other story. So that one gets a big no for me, even though these swords are really popular. I keep seeing them all over, these big, thick Jian. Somebody out there likes them, otherwise it wouldn't keep making them. Let's look at this doll. Look at this. Where do I even begin? Where do I even begin with this one? I just... You know what? You tell me. Do you see anything redeeming about this piece at all? Any of you guys? Somebody in the chat, say something. Any of you like this piece? You think this piece is awesome? Is there something I'm missing? Go on. Oh my God, look at the scabbard. You know, okay. You know what cracks me up? The scabbard is probably in a weird sort of way, it's probably the most tasteful part, despite how super cheap it is. Because Dadao, which is supposed to be based on the big swords that were used by the Chinese soldiers during the war, late Republican era, World War II era, when they're fighting the Japanese, a lot of them didn't really have scabbards. They just grabbed whatever the hell they could throw it in there, right? So in that sense, it's like, yeah, you know, Dadao, just grab some cheap shit, throw the blade in there, oh, you're done. But so much about this sword is wrong. Dadao were not intricately designed, so they wouldn't have this. I mean, you know what? Whatever. If you were really trained well to use the Dadao, and later on you became a master and you opened up your own school and you want your own personal sword, okay, fine. Hilt design like that, do you? Whatever. And I am partial to the purple. I like purple. It's freaking hilarious as hell to see in a sword like this, but whatever. But the blade geometry. And again, I could tell this is mass produced. Look at that. Go on, tell me that's not mass produced. Go on. Try to tell me. Oh God. It does look kind of cool though. In a warhangery, I'm a fantasy kung fu warrior in a other age sort of thing. I mean, it wouldn't look out of place in a video game. You know, I'd have my character maybe use one. But the blade shape, the blade geometry of this cannot be good to swing around. There's no way in hell. I want to see the spine of this thing. Yeah, that's what I thought. Look at this, look at this. Look at this. There is no taper. There is no freaking taper on this thing. And then all right, you got to understand. You got to understand something here. For a blade to not feel like a freaking oversized crowbar, you got to make sure that the tip part of the blade has less mass than the base. And you got to make sure that there isn't too much material to swing around. So when I see the blade geometry like this, where you only see the bevel at pretty much just at the very edge, and the rest of the blade is this thick, and then when I look at the freaking spine, it's basically telling me it's this thick all the way down until you reach the edge, and then it's not even tapered. You want to rip your tendons out swinging around a piece of steel? Go right ahead. Oh, and you get to mess up your joints for the low, low price of $370. Have fun ruining your shoulders. There's no way in hell I would endorse that. No, 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 no. This is the sort of shit that you see in sites like this, folks. If the sword looks cool, it's got a sharp enough edge, throw it on the website. Is it quality? What's that? It didn't fall apart, so it's quality. Make it about $400. It's good enough. By the way, you know, I'm sorry if I'm blowing your impression of me being somebody who isn't a sarcastic, bitter asshole, but this is kind of how I am in real life. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not I try to be a nice person. I, you know, try to be respectful. I do my best not to be full of spite or anything like that, but I also, when I tend to speak my mind a lot, and when I see garbage, I will call it out for garbage. I'm just saying. And you know, there's probably somebody mad at me going, that's not garbage. If I was planning on practicing with it, it is. I mean, if I was just simply using it as just like, this is an example of what you can do if you put your mind to making steel craft. Okay, fine, maybe it's not garbage. And who knows? Again, maybe it might be well put together, but there's no way in hell that I'd be telling somebody who's practicing Dalfa to train with that thing. Now, as far as this thing goes, once again, I'm seeing a gaudy piece of steel. I will say, however, I think that's a real hamon. The way the light's shining on that, this is differentially hardened. Which, I mean, I can't be too surprised because Chinese forges have gotten really good with this sort of blade making by now. You know, this blade does look impressive. That's not fake. The reason why I'll say I am 90 to 95% certain that this hamon is not fake because of the way the light is reflecting off of it. That's what's making me go, whoa, like, wow. This is a beautiful looking blade. Yeah, look at that. That's a beautiful looking blade. And with the double groove, somebody might really like this two-handed doll. That's a beautiful piece as far as the blade goes. I don't know about this. I'm not saying that the fittings are ugly. They're not really. It's just once again following a trend. Why would you put a Hanjian handguard design on a sword like this? I don't get it. There's probably somebody else there that does. And there's probably somebody Chinese going, that is awesome. We put that in these swords all the time. You just don't freaking get it. You're just an idiot Westerner. Okay, I'll take the title. Just ain't me. Maybe a different handguard, but I will admit that it does look nice to design. I'm pretty sure it's mass produced, but it's still really nice. A blade like that is. The wood also looks pretty decent. It's $430 for a blade like that. That's not bad, especially if what type of steel? T10? Wow. See, again, when I'm looking at swords, these are the type of things that would make me go, oh, that's pretty cool. This is like making me go, if somebody actually had that and it doesn't fall apart and they were like practicing with it and stuff and cutting with it, I'd be like, yo, that's a nice piece. All right, this one's going for almost $1,200. This better be good. This better be good. It is made with T10, folded, you know, clay tempered, so it's made katana-like. Got a frost hamon on that one. It is a nice piece. This is a nice piece. It's really nice. Look at that. Okay, that looks pretty. That looks pretty. That's a beautiful pattern. Holy. I mean, damn, there's a couple of people that if I had the money, this might be something I might want to give them as a gift. But look at that. That is really pretty. Is it well done, though? Again, I don't know what forge these guys are getting this from, but it is very pretty. Nice little dragon motif there. Look at that edge. And again, you got, you know, dragon motif there. You got ray skin. You know, the inked ray skin. I don't know if the ray skin is real, but if you're charging like over $1,000 freaking dollars, it better be. Sheesh. Still though, look at it. You know, this I know is mass produced. I've seen this everywhere, but it's still really nice. It's really, really nice. Wow, I'm impressed. Okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna say I'm impressed by this one overall. It might be worth 1,000. I don't know. I mean, I can't say for certain, but what's the weight on this? Only one. Wow. Huh. Okay, you know what? Yeah, that was a nice one. That's a nice looking one. I mean, I wouldn't spend $1,000 on it because I ain't got $1,000. All right, let's move on to a different website. We've been going on the same one for a while, but they got a couple of nice pieces here. All right. One more. I got to see this one. I got to see what the hell this one is. Spring steel Honda, and they don't tell me what type of steel it is. It just simply says spring steel. Whenever I see that, I automatically feel suspect. Like I'm just like, okay, why aren't you telling me what type of steel it is? Spring steel could be any type of steel. It could be a spring steel that is, made out of like, 1060. It could be 9260, or it could be complete crap. What type of spring steel is it? Handle length 25, typical stuff. They're not giving me the weight either. This is a rather suspect description. And your typical Hanwoo Gen design with some rather suspect looking fittings. I can tell you right now, everything that I am seeing here, is telling me cheaply mass produced, because I've seen these everywhere. Even this type of wrapping I've seen everywhere. They picked the cheapest type of freaking, like, look at this. Remember the other one that we showed that even though I was laughing at it, I was still like, it ain't bad. That one actually was using more quality stuff than this. As far as their fittings, look at this. Are these Adidas shoelaces? Like, what the hell kind of freaking... At least they have I know, this is the typical design that everybody copies, but again, you at least see that there's the spacing in there. I actually prefer this to the other ones, but what the hell, man? Like, you might as well rip this stuff out and add your own cord. Go to a hobby shop and find yourself a better freaking cord, like some paracord or something. This is horrible. What the hell? Yeah, it's your typical mono steel. I just don't know what type it is. Sorry, I didn't mean to click it off. Again, the overall Hanwoo shape I have always liked, but I couldn't endorse this. I would just like, spend your money elsewhere. If you're going to be spending $260 and you want a Hanwoo, man, there's better places to go. In fact, let me show you right now. If you really, really want a Hanwoo type Gen, just go here. Just go right here, and then just freaking go to the Gen section. I mean, I'm telling you, I've gotten pieces from these guys. I've communicated with these guys, and I'm telling you right now, this piece going for $269 is going to be made with better quality overall, with a nicer looking blade and scabbard and fittings and all that type of stuff than this freaking thing going for $260. You spend $9 more, you're going to be ending up with a better piece, and a better constructed piece at that. This one, by the way, is freaking folded steel. You can see the pattern on the edge, right? They had that little metal collar there to the scabbard, which I find a little gaudy because, again, the actual Han Dynasty scabbards didn't have that. But I understood why they did that, is to protect the scabbard. But yeah, again, look at the blade. That's not spring steel. That's folded steel. $9 more gets you folded steel. $9 more gets you a better wrapping on the grip. Though it is round, so what can you do? Better looking fittings. I mean, come on. $9 more. Yeah, hell no. Just no. Don't do that to yourself. Don't get that. So let's check out a different website. Let's go to Swords of Northshire. I've had a couple of people tell me that this is a good website to get swords from. I've never gotten swords from them, so I can't say. But I will admit that almost every time I've looked on Google Image to find some decent looking swords to just kind of like look at, whatever, I keep finding pictures from here. Hey, this sword looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Made to order, going for $769. Okay, it doesn't have the raised skin, much different fit. Okay, so it's not the same thing. I thought it for a split second I saw the red. I'm like, don't tell me that this site is selling it for a lot cheaper. But then again, it's $10.90. It's $10.95 instead of T10. It's not saying it's, you know, it's not saying that it's differentially hardened and nicely polished and all that. But it is made to order, and it's going for $769. Not bad. Not bad at all. You could ask whether you want to be sharpened or not. Put engravings on it. It's there. Ah, this sword. This freaking thing. Oh, this is a Mialdo. Well, it really isn't a Mialdo, but I don't want to get into that. That's going to be... I think I've explained it before. That, you know, things that we're calling Mialdo really aren't Mialdo. But this confuses me. Because anything that is being called Mialdo do not have this. And they do not have that either. This is more of a Taichi-Do, what we would call a Taichi-Do. But they're calling it a Mialdo. Why? Because they just gave it a longer blade or something? And just, something about this is making me want to scream, stay away. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's the fact that this is going for $338.99. And yet I'm looking at this and the back of my mind is screaming, cheaply made. But I don't know. Maybe it's just with bad lighting on the blade or something, but there's something about this was just making me go, I'm going to just chalk it up to, like, you know, my own phobias or something. It might be fine, but... Okay, I guess part of what's making me go no is that despite the fact that they're calling this a Mialdo, and that is not a Mialdo. No way. No way. That's what they would call a typical Taichi-Do. Here's another Taichi-Do. See, and here they're calling it what it is. For $839. But yeah, you see that same handguard, see the ring on the end? If it's supposed to be Mialdo, there's supposed to be a disc hand grip on there. Not this S-shaped one. I don't... See, already I am seeing things that displease me. Here's another one of those so-called the wars yet. Look how wide it is. Again, I didn't practice Chinese swordsmanship to emulate Conan. Otherwise, I would be taking up a different art. It's an interesting etching on the blade, though. The design on there. I like the pommel. But I wouldn't buy this. No way. Not even as a wall hanger. Maybe somebody else, but no. I guess for the price, it ain't bad. It's $10.95, but again, I don't... All of these are made to order, so they're definitely working with some kind of Chinese forge. Oh, God. Let's see what this one's going to be. Am I going to cry? Am I going to yell and scream? This is obviously yet another Hanwu Dao. Hanwu Dao, sorry. Hanwu Jian. I'm tired. I told you I came... Freaking almost 2 hours of yapping on this. Even though I criticized the metal on the end of the scabbard, I do have to admit I kind of like the shape of that fitting. And, you know, again, I am partial to this overall look for these swords. But, again, everybody and their mother's copying this. I do like that design on the pommel, though. And the design on that, it may not be the, you know, the ones with the holes, but that's still rather nice, and it's slightly small. It's a slightly different shape than a hand grip. It's slightly narrower and smaller. That looks kind of nice. Scabbard looks okay. Going for $740, freaking dollars. Really? You better tell me what kind of steel this is. And the weight, 1.2. Whoa, only 1.2 kilograms. Yeah, but then again, what's the blade length? 77 centimeters. That's pretty damn short. For this sword, the blade's only 77 centimeters. You must be bugging. No way. Come on now. And you're going for 7. I don't know. That's another thing. You know these Hanwu shapes where they do this shape? It bothers me when I see them use this particular design for a sword that has a blade that's only 28 freaking inches. That's just blasphemy to me. It needs to be at least 32, and even that I consider to be a little bit too short for anything that is claiming to be a Hanjian. It's gotta be longer than that, but whatever. The design has gotten so popular that I'm now seeing it on swords that are like 28 freaking inches, meant to be used easily with one hand, similar to the, the typical Chinese yen that you see in Kung Fu schools. It's like they just are trying to replace those with these and just make them a little bit shorter, and it rubs me the wrong way. Oh God, do you see this? I knew this was going to pop up. I was wondering when this was going to pop up. And I talked about this in that video I made about like trends in Chinese swords, where they are now literally calling these things the Avatar swords, despite the fact that these things were made way before Avatar and the producers copy. Have some pride. Why are you going to name your freaking sword after a cartoon that copied off of your culture? And you got to use their name to sell your stuff? Come on now. Have some pride. Are you that desperate to sell it? Oh, man. And I was going to say some nasty things about the wrap, but it doesn't look that bad. It's a little too wide, but at least it doesn't look like it came off of an Adidas sneaker. The blade, I could tell right away this is going to have some heft to it. Maybe a little too much. And no, it is not black steel. It's funny that they're calling it the black sword, but that don't look black to me. I don't know. Maybe they blued it, but it does not look blued to me. It's your typical... This is just your typical Hanwu design. You know, the design that they've copied all over the place. They just simply are calling this the Avatar sword because there are people out there that don't know any better. And they're charging $460 for it. That's what you call no shame. No shame whatsoever. And they did it twice. They got another one. With a different design on the grip. Oh my God, they got no shame. No shame. Get same, hexagonal blade geometry. Craft sign. So again, this one has to be made to order. A 76 centimeter. Are you freaking kidding me? No. Why? You guys want to get a sense of my mind, like what I think when I see these swords. You're seeing it right now. Like I look at a lot of these and I laugh because it's either that or cry or rage because it's just taking people's money. And the sad thing is the blade probably is pretty nicely made. If I'm going to be, just take my biases out of it, it might be well made. I don't know. Well, I say well made with a caveat. Like, this is going for $319. And I get the feeling that these parts are glued on instead of, like, screwed on to make it a little bit more secure. Again, you got the factory pushed out fittings. You got the blade that's a little, for my taste, if you're going to be using this design, you better make that blade longer because it's supposed to be a two-hander. And I know somebody's going to argue with me on that one because katana, they tend to be, like, especially traditional katana, they're two-handed swords, but their blades don't really, traditionally, they don't go that much longer than 28, 29 inches. Some of them are 27. But I will retort that traditionally speaking, especially if you look at some of the more war swords, Chinese swords, the two-handers, tend to be long, okay? Especially if you're going to claim that the sword is based off a design from the Han Dynasty. You saw when I was reviewing those swords how big those freaking things are. They better be at least around 34 to 36, or even more than that if you're going to call it a two-hander. This one, no. Now that's just my own personal taste talking there, but Wow, you're asking 4,000? Well, then again, I'm seeing the pattern on the blade. I can kind of understand why. Oh, and it's Shenzhou. Okay, yeah. That's why it's going for that much. That's why it's going for that much. That dude is like one of the master craftsmen. So, yeah, this would command a high price. This is not a sword that you're gonna just simply pop out for a kung fu demonstration. This is like a status sword. This is something that you're gonna be investing in. That being said, for the amount of beauty that I am seeing, like this sword, I'm looking at it and I probably could tell a lot more if I actually had it in front of me. But just from these pictures, I'm like, yeah, this was very well done. This is a very beautiful piece, despite the fact that I know the fittings were factory produced. But that blade, holy shite, that blade, wow, that's some really good work. That being said, I wouldn't get it even if I had the money because it doesn't really fit my particular aesthetics. I'm a very strange, picky dude. This is a beautiful piece that I wouldn't want on my wall. I do not blame you if you would want it, because again, it's done by a master smith, so I just don't like the design. Likewise, this one. Why do I keep doing that? This one looks gorgeous, to be honest, especially looking at the blade. I don't like the overall aesthetic. I don't like the overall design. And it's kind of leaning a little bit more toward the wide blades that generally not supposed to be that wide. Well, it might be just bordering on too wide. It might be just narrow enough to be okay. This one I actually like a bit better in terms of its overall look, and it's so much cheaper. Like that one, see, I like the design. I like the overall shape of the handguard. Blade looks nice and elegant. Fittings are nice and elegant. A dark motif overall with it. Under $500. Nice, tasteful looking tassel on there. I actually like this one better than the last couple of few that I saw that are going for way, way, way more. I have weird tastes. I'm not going to deny it. I wonder if they're going to have, let's see, I've seen this one before, and again, it's a typical, we're going to be like, there's so many Hanwoo variants. This is what I would consider like a Hanwoo variant, even though it's not the exact same shape, but it's overall a very similar profile. Same here. That one I've seen all over the place, but I really like it. And it's simple, but man, going for $819, Jesus. This one's as cheap as you can get. And this, wait a minute, wait. You can asking for $719 for a sword with fittings like this. What? That must be one hell of a blade if you're charging $719 when the fittings look like this. That's almost like spending $1,000. Okay, it's sort of like, you know how there's some people out there, like those who collect Japanese katana that are traditionally made in Japan, and all they're paying for is the blade. They don't even have any fittings or anything else. It's just simply put in the, the simple saya. I forgot the traditional name for it, but when they just simply have it in just a plain old wood saya, and you gotta like spend extra money to get the, the tsuka and the tsuba and all that on there to make it look like a proper katana instead of just a blade and a stick. That's sort of what I'm thinking when I'm looking at this, even though this has fittings. But I'm like, you got just plain old brass fittings and, no, barely any embellishments. I mean, this is as no frills as you can get. The blade does look pretty, though. But, really? I sort of wish that I could, like, if it's one thing just me throwing my, freaking cheap-ass opinion about these swords, but it would be funny if we actually had, like, I could hear you guys as well, and we're all like, I don't know, but the back and forth. I sort of wish now that, but Skull's usually busy. I wonder if I might want to do another one of these, and instead, like, it's me and then somebody else, maybe Skull or somebody else, and we're both like ragging and admiring swords. I think that would be hilarious. Because you kind of need like people to bounce off of to make it a little bit more entertaining. Jesus Christ, look at... Okay, this one I can believe would be $749 because the one that I held years ago was going for $1,000. It looks like they changed the scabbard slightly, though. Well, it's not the same guys, but it's the same freaking... Everything else is pretty much the same from what I remembered. The grip, the blade. There's a little bit more work put on this blade than the other one that I held, though. But this one's probably beefy. The one that I held before was pretty beefy in terms of its weight. This one... Blade and Let 76. Not bad, I guess. So far, I have not really seen, like... I've seen maybe one sword that I'm like, okay, I might get... But so far, I'm looking at all of these, and I'm just like, no, 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 hell no, no. And look how the katana creep in there, even though these are supposed to be Chinese swords. Dragon Phoenix Yen, clay tempered. Okay. This one looks pretty. Granted, if you're charging almost $1,200 freaking dollars for it, it better look good. Seriously, look, I do like, I mean, it does look high-end. Longer tassel, kind of going back to what I said earlier about how you would train with these, though me personally, I probably would take the tassel off if I was ever going to swing this around. I mean, well, to be honest, if you're going to be charging me this much money for the sword, and I'm crazy enough to buy it, unless I'm doing a master demonstration like once a year, this thing ain't leaving the wall or the stand or the case or whatever it's in. You don't do drills with a $1,000 sword. At least I wouldn't. I think that's insane. Yeah, and then there's... Okay, remember that Ming one I talked about, Emperor Yongle? Here we go. This one's a little closer to... Jesus Christ! I need a moment. That... Wow. I mean, I knew there were swords out there that the Chinese were selling that were close to 10,000, but this is... Holy shite. Are you... The fittings look fairly nice. The ray skin is well implemented. Let me see the blade, though. That is some nicely polished fittings. Why are you not showing me a close-up of the blade? What are you trying to hide? Okay, there we go. Nicely embossed. Very subtle pattern, but it's nicely done. Again, Shenjul, his swords command a high price, a ridiculously high price. This is a status symbol sword through and through, and considering that it's based off a sword that an emperor used to have, I could understand it. That being said, $10,000. If I was a freaking millionaire, I wouldn't pay for this for one simple reason, and it's my own damn weird tastes. I do not like this design. I know it's considered a national treasure. I know some people who would kill for this. I've seen other reproductions of this at a cheaper price that are very well made. Ain't going on my rack. I've never really liked the design. I told you I got weird tastes. But I will admit that one looks very well made. And considering who made it, yeah. I mean, if somebody was like, hey, I got money to burn. Is this one okay to get? Well, if you want. Considering who made it, it ain't going to fall apart on you. I know you're getting quality. So if that's what floats your boat, fine. But damn, that's a lot of money. Whew. Okay. There was a certain sword that I was hoping to see here, considering a lot of these swords that I'm seeing here, I saw on a couple of other websites. All of them grouped together under the same category, like high-end swords, quote unquote. And there's a particular design in there that I absolutely loved, and I have not seen it pop up here. But this is one of the designs I did like. And it's funny how the ones I like won't kill your bank accounts. This one is nice, elegant, somewhat understated, but you can tell it's pretty well made. It looks pretty. It's not too gaudy. It's got a beautiful looking blade. Nice pattern on there. Really nice pattern. Well put together. Guess what? $339. You don't need to burn money to get something decent. All right, enough of this website. I'm going to move on to Hanwon Forge. This is another one where a whole lot of people are like, you need to come here. We're going to go straight to the gym and see. And okay, this is where we're going to start seeing things. This is when we're going to start see. Like, I've seen this sword already. I've seen this sword already. Yeah, we know we've seen it. Wait a second. This was going for $650. We got to go back. Hold on. Hold on. I sense shenanigans. We got to go back. We got to go back. Hold on. Where is it? You saw it too, right? Where is it? 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 Come on. Come on. We know what we saw. We know what we saw. Let's... Not that one. Go back up. Go back up. Did I pass it? I don't think I did. I'm pretty sure I didn't. Pretty sure my brain is melting, which is why I can't remember how far up it was. Was that? No. Go back up. I'm going too far down. Go back. Wait. I thought I just... There. No, that's the doll. The tassel fooled me. Go back up. Let's see here. No. Here we go. Do you see this? Look at this. Clay tempered, all that, going for that much. I go over here. And what do we have here? I knew I was sensing shenanigans. Look at this shit. It's the same sword. $650. We go over here, and we're mugging you in the alley prices. You know, in case anybody was actually interested in this and they were actually thinking of going out and getting it, I might have just saved you some money. In fact, I'm willing to bet, because this actually goes into what I was about to say before I noticed this. I went, wait a second. A lot of these swords that I saw here, I saw elsewhere. And they were all, like I was saying, they're all grouped under the same header, high-priced swords. And now I'm seeing them here too, which I'm not surprised, because again, that master swordsman who's commanding a high price for swords, they're all coming out of one particular forge. And I talked about that forge in that video where I was talking about sword trends, right? The one in like Shandong province, something like that. I'm completely butchering myself now. Yeah, here we go. Shen Guanlong. This master and this forge, the Shen Guanlong forge, there's just a fact that they just churn this stuff out. When they talk about the swords that are made by master swordsmith like him, what he's working on is the blade. Like he you know, and yeah, they are well made master, you know, like just, you know that it's done by a master smith. The blades themselves are not being done by some dude on an internship. Like, no, this guy knows what he's doing. He's won awards. He's mastered it for years. So you know when you're getting a sword with his name on it, it's going to be very well done, particularly the blade. That being said, it's not like there's only one of them. There are several of them that he's making. He's concentrating on the blade, and they put the fittings on there, and they make sure the fittings are really nice ones, and they make sure they're constructed very well, because if you're going to be spending several freaking $100s on it, you want it to be good. But the fact that we can see his swords, I'm pretty sure some of his swords are on this site. We know they're on this site. Now that we're seeing them on this site, I know of at least 2 other sites where you can pick these freaking things up. Yeah, that should tell you. It's a decent business churning out swords from those factories. And now we're seeing that if you just shop around a little bit, you don't need to spend, you know, the prices that we saw here. You don't need to fall for those shenanigans, because here we go, $650. $650. No haggling. There you go. And what's even funnier, if I really, you know, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but if you really like the design, but you don't want to spend $650, you can actually, I know of at least one forge where you can contact them directly and go, I want you to make me that, but with a cheaper blade that's at least decent. How much? And you could probably work at a price that you can afford. I know that for a fact because I've sort of seen it done. I've seen swords that other people were charging almost close to $1,000 for. And then you go to this other forge and go, yo, you see that? I want that. But I don't necessarily want some mastersmith making it like a super special folded, like regular, like whatever folded blade you guys think you can put together that's decent enough. And I know these fittings are factory mass produced, so use the same fittings. Please put this together properly. Don't make it feel like a piece of junk. But how much would you charge me? $300. Boom, done. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. I used to be in the sword market for a while. I don't know if some of you older guys remember. I used to sell this stuff. Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans going on out there. Sorry, I hit the mic. There's a lot of shenanigans going on out there in the sword market. So just saying. I almost don't want to go through this. What? Oh, wait, no, it's not the same sword. Again, I was fooled by the tassel. But again, that lets you know the tassels are mass produced. I'm seeing it here. We saw it in Nadal. We're seeing it over here. Now I'm seeing it over here. I'm not, by the way, just because a lot of these swords are mass produced doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad. I do need to point that out. Just because, you know, you're seeing them all mass produced, like this guy's got it, that guy, and this place is selling it, that place is selling it, and then there are other forges that are copying off each other like crazy. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad, per se. It's just that they're not necessarily as special as some people would like to make them out to be. But, I mean, let's look at it another way. Katana, which, the people who really love katanas in Japanese culture, they go crazy over those. But they don't seem to realize that there was a time, especially during the time when samurai were running around, having to fight civil wars and other stuff. A lot of swords are just getting churned out. Okay? They're just pumping them out. Does it mean that those swords are bad? A part of the reason why Japanese swords, especially traditionally made Japanese swords from the island, command so high a price is simply because of the value that we've put on them for an aesthetic reason. We look at them as works of art, and highly made works of art coming from a source as original as possible, we're going to want a high price off of. We're going to, that thing is worth thousands. And unfortunately, and this is going in a completely different rant, the whole thing of marketeering, like buying and selling things, a lot of it is psychological manipulation. Some of it is just us are willing to, sometimes we will put a high value price. Like, you made something that I think is a work of art. We think we should pay you this much to show our appreciation of it. Like, to us, the amount of work you put into it deserves this much value put on it. Like, you deserve getting this in return for what you've done, for what you've produced, because this product you're making is at such a level, or the amount of time you put in mastering your craft needs some form of high value acknowledgement. I can understand that. But unfortunately, especially in today's modern markets, a lot of the time the high prices that things have is mostly because of psychological manipulation. Again, we just saw it now when we were on this site, and we saw swords being called avatar swords, and they were charging a certain price for them. That's psychological manipulation. You'll see, it's not just swords, you see this everywhere. Hell, the Diablo Immortal game that I was talking about earlier, a lot of the shenanigans in there which make the monetization they're doing with it so unethical is because of psychological manipulation. It goes back to what people consider to be one of the fundamental rules of economics. I'm sure you guys have heard it before, where they say that when the demand for something goes up, the price goes up. And they call that a fundamental truth of, the market. And that's wrong. It's not completely wrong, but it's misleading. Whenever somebody says when the demand for something goes up, the price goes up, they make it act like the market itself is some kind of living entity that chooses things for you. No, people put prices on things. The correct way to say that line is when the demand for something goes up, people jack the price up. That's more truthful. There are people out there who, when they see you, we got people right now who are in the business of selling you things who are the type of people who, if they saw you crawling out of the desert begging for water, will charge you everything you have just so you can get a couple of drops on your tongue because they know how desperate you are for it. And that's a normal activity in today's marketing. That's the ethics of today's market. But they tell you it's okay. They tell you that's the rule. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to psychologically F with people. You're supposed to, rip them out of every dime they have. Otherwise, you're not a good businessman. That's my think deeply about this and how completely flawed our world is thought for the day. Let's get back into swords. I wanted to flip through all of these, but again, we've seen most of these already. The only unique thing is over here, I'm noticing the prices are much cheaper. And they're still rather nice looking. I wouldn't get most of these, but they're still rather nice looking. Look at this one. This is another of the, the dragon traditional design, $450. I'd pick this one up. Yeah, I would. It's got the handguard shape I really like. I really like the Ace of Spades shape. Nice race skin fitting. Nice race skin on both the grip and the scabbard. And on the scabbard, it's nice and polished. Look at that. Again, a rather nice looking tassel. I could take it or leave it, if it's there. Nice little feature. Good overall package. Nice looking blade. Though, considering the geometry, it's making me wonder how much weight, how heavy it is. The fittings are nice and thick. This is a nice piece. Look at the pattern on that. That's a really nice piece. And it's going for $450. It's just under $500. Well, not just under. It's almost $500. Round it up, $500. Blade length is about what I expected, but it's a one-handed sword that's not trying to be a Hanwu one, so that's typical. That's not bad. I personally like my one-handed swords to be around 30 inches, but 28, that's good. Damascus sword. Nobody knows how to make this anymore. Oh, you gotta love this. It comes with a free sword bag. Almost every sword now comes with a sword bag. They're like a dime a dozen now. But no, seriously, this is a nice piece. If somebody was like, hey, what do you think about this one? Sheesh, it looks pretty good. And I know which forge it's coming from. I'd get it. It's not this forge, by the way. This is just the name of the website. It's not Hanbon Forge. That's that Shen forge that we were talking about earlier. But it's, the prices here. So far, I have yet to see any prices on this site for around 1,000. But they're all the same ones that we saw before. And some of these are really nice. Look at this one. This one's also going for $450. Kind of nice rosewood color. Again, the nice handguard shape that I really like. They got I think a peony flower on there. Oh, yeah, it's peony, yeah. Clay tempered, so it's differentially hardened. This one's nice. See, I like swords that they have a certain elegance and beauty to them, but they're not overly gaudy. Now, maybe you're looking at this and going, that is super overly gaudy. What is wrong with you? But I look at this and I'm like, it's got just enough embellishment so that you can say, oh, that's really pretty, but not so much that it's like it's just jumped out of a freaking video game or something. Or, a wildly inaccurate movie or something. This one I know I'm going to hate even before I fully look at it. Those also going for 450 again. Yep. Gee, where have we seen this before? Didn't we see this on a Dow way back? That two-handed Dow that I said the blade was really, really nice, but I didn't know about the fitting. Here it is now on a Gen with an overly wide blade and a round freaking hilt. Why? I am pretty sure this thing's heavier than it needs to be. What's the weight? What's the weight? Okay, the weight without the scabbard is 1.25 kilograms. That's not bad. That's not bad. Still don't like the look of it though. Yeah, these are yeah, a lot of these are really nice. Oh, for those of you who like purple, there you go. A Tang Dynasty. Well, there really were no Tang Dynasty Dian, but I've noticed that people like playing so-called Tang Dynasty fittings on Dian, and I do not dislike that trend because I happen to really like these sorts of fittings on them. But they were on Dao. The Tang Dynasty Dao were straight, so it still works. And this one's nice, and again, for people who like purple, this nice little purple sword. You know, and if you're willing to spend a little extra cash on it, $525 is kind of steep for me. But again, considering I'm pretty sure I know which forge this came from, and it looks like it was really nicely put together. What's this one? Ooh, I kind of like that one. Again, I know it's yet another Hanwu derivative, but there's something about this that appeals to me. Maybe it's because of just the simple looking profile of the overall sword. I like them when they're kind of like that kind of elegant, slender look to them. I'm really partial to that. So, and again, that blade looks really nice. Got the Hamon there going, plus the pattern, the folded pattern. There's something about this I really freaking like. You know what? Actually, where was it? What was it? See, this one has a touch of simple elegance to it that separates it from a lot of the other Hanwu designs that we keep seeing. They went with a different handguard shape. They went with a completely different overall motif for it. You know what would make me want to grab this? If this was a two-hander. Like, I think the hilt, the hilt here, I don't know if it's supposed to be a two-handed sword or not. They keep putting two-handed sword hilts on one-handed blades, which just makes no freaking sense to me. But this one, the handle length is 27 freaking centimeters. Ugh. Well, actually, no. Well, my conversion from the metric system over to, you know, what we got over here is kind of faulty, so that might not be. I'm just gonna say that if they made this but in a two-hander so that the hand grip was able to support two hands and the blade was around 36 inches, oh, I would be drooling after this one. Same thing with the typical Tang Dynasty designs, by the way. Like the typical Tang Dynasty Dao design that you sometimes see, I usually see those mounted on Dian as well. And yeah, 11 inches, that's not bad. Thank you, Grant. Thank you very much. That for a two-handed sword, that's not bad. That would work. You put that on a 34, 36-inch blade, oh, I'd be all over it. Same thing with the simplistic Tang Dynasty fittings on a Dian. For some strange reason, I always see them in my mind as a two-hander instead of a typical one-handed. Again, I'm weird. I acknowledge this. I've learned to live with it. Really nice pieces. You know, it's funny, me going through here is not making me want to like bookmark this site. Because I'm like, I'm seeing some really nice pieces at prices that don't make me want to kick a wall down. Really, really nice. Really, really, really nice. There was one design that I saw online that I haven't found. And I can't for the life, I don't remember where it is. And I'm not seeing it here. I'm starting to get upset. See, remember when we saw the ridiculously high price for this elsewhere? $420 over here. I still think that's a little bit too much for something with just plain fitting. But then again, I don't know. Okay, Chen has certain plain fittings on theirs, but we know their blades are awesome, so... What's this? I do like that. Typical Hanwu. Typical Hanwu. This is slightly smaller, different design. There's an elegance. Wait. That looks like the Black Tortoise. Possibly. But I could be wrong. Not too sure if that's a creature or not. It is a really beautiful design, though. It's very pretty. The Dark Warrior. Chuan-Di. One of the deities of Taoism, known as the Black Deity. So, cool name. Under $300. I wouldn't fault somebody for grabbing this one. It kind of fits my aesthetic. Twin T's asking me a question. So for 2 one-handed Dian, you prefer the hilt to be 1/3 the length of the blade, or is that a general standard? That's my personal preference. Here's the thing. It's partly personal preference, partly what I'm used to. When I was first starting to learn this stuff, I always saw the one-handed Dian being around, you know, and again, I'm apologizing for using inches instead of millimeters and centimeters, but the one-handed Dian that I've seen when I was first learning this stuff always had blades between 28 to 30 inches, and they were meant to be used with one hand. And every last two-handed one I saw had really long handles that were at least a foot long or slightly longer, with blades that were at least 36 inches in length. That's what I've seen. Almost every kung fu school I went to, that was the typical, you know, measurements I saw. And nowadays I'm looking around, I'm seeing, oh, Chinese two-handed sword has a blade that's only 30 inches. Like, what? Now, maybe it was the Republican era that ruined that. Maybe that has something to do with it. Because we do see certain Ming and especially Qing Dynasty designs where you see two-handed Dian where the blades are not that much longer than 30, maybe 32 inches. You do see that. But then again, you go back and looking at Han Dynasty design Dians and you saw freaking huge. Granted, those blades are a little bit more slender, but still. And then you see like the freaking like Ming two-handed Dao that are as big as they are, and and then you see Miao Dao, especially the one I got upstairs, which I still need to do a review for, that's almost as tall as I am. Like the Chinese two-handed swords tend to be freaking long, especially the ones that are used on the battlefield. And then later on, the stuff that's, I remember Dr. Yang Ming, you know, he teaches different forms and different arts, and I noticed that he happens to teach a Yang-style Tai Chi sword form, and he recommends that the sword you use for that one is one that is supposed to come up to your, you know, right here. Okay? And it's a two-handed sword. If you're, I mean, in typical Chinese, you know, designs that I've seen, the swords that come up to here, the Dian that come up to here, like when you take them out the scabbard, that's a two-hander. Okay? Like, this one, which is one-handed, 30-inch blade. Look where it is. It's right here. Right here. And then you got the two-handed ones that I typically see that some people are like, certain Tai Chi people, especially Bagua people who use the two-handers in one hand, they come up to here, sometimes even up to here. And yet you're finding people making swords with a blade that is only 30 inches with a slightly longer handle and going, yep, that's your typical two-hander. Get out of here. No, that has not been my experience. It's not what I've been seeing. And, I mean, I'm pretty sure somebody's going to be pointing out, well, you know, modern trends ruined it. This is not how they were in the past, whatever. But we're seeing examples of really long swords in the past, too. And my personal preference, it just, to me, makes a hell of a lot more sense for the two-handers to be longer. Otherwise, what do you need two hands for? Okay, here's my logic also. And again, I'm saying this is all my personal logic. And I know that there's going to be counter-arguments to this. And I think whatever counter-arguments you come up with, they're probably going to be valid, especially if you already know something about swords or you train with them or whatever. But it seems to me that every time I see some culture using a sword that's two hands, it's to compensate for the length, so you have more leverage to use it, right? So yeah, like Twin C just said, imagine a two-handed dagger. It doesn't really make much sense. In fact, Skull had even pointed out, like there was a sword he reviewed years ago where the blade was pretty short. Like it was like only like that long, and then it had a really long hilt, like it had a two-handed grip. And he's like, I don't. Yeah, he was talking about certain kokatana. He was talking about like a kokatana that I think he was either reviewing or talking about, and he's like, I don't get it. Like he's like, why would you need two hands for a blade this short? He's like, it's like because the blade is not that long. Holding it in two hands, he was talking about how you don't really feel too much of the mass while swinging it, so it's kind of harder to actually put, power into the cut. I would counter by saying that usually in Japanese styles, you're not necessarily chopping so much as you're slicing, and the two-handed grip is going to help you to facilitate more of that slice. But even so, it's still going to feel weird because, like, again, when you're using a two-handed thing, you want to feel the mass moving, right? If you're barely feeling it, like, then what's the point? You just hold it in one hand. And again, I know there's certain exceptions, but it just seems to me that the longer the blade is and the more mass there is for you to heft, the more it makes sense to hold it in two hands. Now, I know there's certain exceptions, like rapier, for instance, or certain side swords. European swords I've seen some of them with really long freaking blades, but you use it one-handed. Certain rapier or, small swords are called small swords for a reason, so they don't exactly fit. But definitely when I'm thinking of rapier or certain side swords, they got really long blades, but they're balanced well enough for one hand. But we don't really see it going the other direction where you see short freaking weapons with two hands. The only swords I can think of with shorter blades that you use two-handed are katana and certain two-handed dao, but those tended to have heavier blades, so again, it made more sense to have that two-handed, grip on it. So, yeah, my personal thinking and my logic is, if the blade is like 30 inches and shorter, especially when you're considering Chinese styles, they're one-handed swords. That's always been my thinking. If you're talking about a blade that starts from around 34, 36, 38, now we're talking about the two-handed ones. That's my bias, and I'm sticking with it. This is what makes the most sense to me. So, and I'm sorry the whole time I was talking with freaking text on the screen. You had nothing decent to look at. I apologize for that. Good old Cult of Athena. Good old Cult of Athena. I've always loved this site, and I really feel bad that I've never bought anything from them. I've always wanted to, and then something else would come along somewhere else, and I ended up getting that. But this site, I've talked to them before. There was a time when I was living, some of you might remember, I was living in the Midwest. I lived near Chicago. They had a store in Chicago. I could have went there at any time. But these guys are really free. I've always thought Cult of Athena was cool. That being said, they sell good stuff and they also sell garbage. Not that it's their fault. They're storefront. They don't make the swords. They just sell what's given to them. So, here we go. The good old Youngling Doll. This sword, I love this freaking thing. I already talked about it, but man, I love this sword. I think it's worth the $428. This is a really nice piece. Especially if you get the folded steel option. It's beautiful. Actually, since we're talking about doll, I've been yapping a little bit too much. It's over 2 hours. I need to get ready to go to bed. Want to know a secret? And I'm pretty sure there are going to be some people kicking down my front freaking door as soon as I say it. As long as you don't beat me up too much, I'll offer you some milk and cookies. I'm not a major fan of Niue though. I like the Yanling. I like the Yuedo, the willow leaf sabers, the goose quill sabers. I really like those. These, I don't hate them, but they've become so ubiquitous, I don't really have a thought one way or the other about them, despite the fact that they are the typical Kung Fu weapon. Like when people think of Kung Fu swords, this is it. This is the one, the oxtail doll. It's iconic for a reason. It's fairly simple to use. I say fairly. There's still a craft to it. You need to master it, but they're fairly easy to use. They're well balanced. They got a good, nice blade shape to them. They're effective. But I just look at them and go, okay, saber. I don't care. I just don't care. Because they're everywhere. I even see them in places they shouldn't be. What I mean by that is I've seen so many kung fu movies where the soldiers are jumping around with these things, and these things were never used by the official military. This was a civilian's weapon. Maybe local militia guys used it, and it was toward the late end of the Qing dynasty. This was never in official troops' hands. I'm sorry, no. So whenever you see a movie and you're seeing like troops running around with this thing, anachronistic. They got it wrong. And I'm not saying it's not a bad sword. I don't think one way or the other. When I see them, I'm just like, eh. And I know there are other people out there right now just like, they're probably getting red in the face, like, you're speaking blasphemy. I know I am, but I just don't care. I haven't cared for a long time. I can take them or leave them. And I've handled some really nice ones, but I'm more partial to these. Because you don't see these often. When I go to kung fu schools and people are training with the Dao, you don't see this. You don't. Even though that's more accurate as far as the battlefield weapon, and I find it to be a lot more interesting in terms of its shape. My voice is squeaking now. I probably sound really annoying, and I apologize. I'm looking for other Dao. There's like a certain one. Oh, they're featuring these now? This one I'm really curious about this one. This right here, this two-hander, it's simple, but beautiful. Look at that. Again, it's kind of based off a Hanwu type of design, but look how tight that wrapping is. Look at the blade. Nice strong fort there. Nice, the blade shape. I could tell, granted the blade's not all that's fancy looking, scabbard, like there's a simplicity to this that again appeals to me. I love slender looking Jen. How long is this? Please tell me. Look, see, two-handed sword, 38 inches. Look at the weight. It's only 2 pounds, 5 ounces. You have any idea how beautifully quick you're gonna be able to whip that around? I would love to have this one. This is one that I want to save money up for. But I will also say that I've been spoiled by the Roaring Dragon and the Striking Eagle from LKChen. I still have those, and those are still a joy to use when I'm doing a couple of two-handed drills. But I wouldn't mind having this one in my collection. I really wouldn't. It's granted, I probably would have to sharpen it, but it's beautiful. Yeah, for a practitioner, before a sword can visually appeal, it must appeal functionally. Yes, that's my number one criteria. I've reached a point where I'm just not interested in wall hangers at all. I'm not interested in fantasy pieces. I don't care how good they supposedly are supposed to look or who made them. I remember for a while in the sword market, like there was some dude who was well known for making a lot of really nice fantasy pieces, and they were fetching a high price, but they were all wall hangers. I don't need something that's a simple wall hanger. I'd rather have a wall hanger that I can also grab off the wall to fight with. I know how unrealistic that is. We're not living in an age where you're going to be defending yourself with cold steel, but I'm just saying, I practice with these things. I'd rather have something to practice with than something to go, that's kind of cool, isn't it? And yet I'm spending almost practice money prices for it. No, not interested. I don't want wall hangers. So, see, again, here we go, the Roaring Dragon. This one, again, you've seen it already, so I don't know why I'm showing it off, but something like this, there's an understated beauty about it. There's just enough embellishment to make it really cool, but it's not overly gaudy. Simple hand grip, beautiful, nice, long, slender blade. I personally like the Striking Eagle's profile a bit more than the Dragon one, but this one's easier to use. This one, I think I'm going back to my review. This one, you really better be good with your stance work, or this is going to kick your ass. It's so freaking long. You need to use your body properly for the leverage. Otherwise, I'm not saying it is too heavy. It's just more going to feel too unwieldy. You're gonna find yourself struggling a little bit to get the blade where you want it to go, because it's so long it might start pulling you. Whereas if you anchor yourself properly and your stance work is really good, your leg work is really good, you're going to be able to control it better. That's why I call that particular sword, like, again, when it came to these two, I called, damn it, I think I went past it. Yep, I did. I am sorry. Let's go forward. Yeah, when I was comparing these two swords, I called the Roaring Dragon your general, your bodyguard. This dude will work with you. He gets the job done. This is the Grandmaster. He's going to whack you in the back of the head every time you F up. So, yeah, but we've already seen those. Yeah, the Cult of Athena always has a good selection on stuff. Single doll. Again, this is it looks almost like an oxtail doll. And again, whatever. This one over here, I actually was interested in this. I almost grabbed this at one point. I'm no longer really all that interested, but I still find it to be a good piece. And there was one dude who DM'd me who has this piece, who swore by it. He said it was his favorite gen that he's ever had. He's like, that was it. He was done after he got his hands on that one. And it does look really nice. This one upsets me. Here we go. We get back to ranting before I go to bed. This one upsets me so much. They're charging $268 for a sword that is nothing but a practice piece. This was the thing that frustrated me so much about Hanwei. I think this is the one where I gave up on them. Well, let me explain. When Hanwei started making Chinese straight swords, and I saw their designs, I was super excited. Because they were the first company I can think of that started to make Jian that looked different from everyone else's at the time. This was just before the Hanwu stuff started coming out. Again, if you remember my other video, I was talking about how all the swords looked the same. They had the exact same handguard. That say that the Longchuan knockoffs, as I like to call them. Everyone was making that design. Everyone and their mother was making that design. You just couldn't escape from it. Then Hanwei came out, but Hanwei was mostly known for, well, first they were like, yeah, Hanwei bought out, what's the name of that company? It doesn't matter. When Hanwei came out, they were first known for making their Japanese katanas, those replicas. And they were a little shaky at first, but after a while, they became known for being really, really good. Their practical katana, some of you old school guys might remember those when they first started coming out, and they were starting to be all the rage. And then they started making Chinese swords. I'm like, holy shit. These guys who are making these really good Japanese katanas are now making the Chinese ones? Awesome! Sign me up! How come these aren't sharp? That's not fair. You're making the European one sharp. Well, sort of. You're making the Japanese ones sharp, and they were, and decent quality for the time. But none of the Chinese ones were. The few sharp ones they had weren't meant to be used for cutting. They were just sharp wall hangers. They actually told people, don't try to cut with these. And yet they were charging close to $1,000 for them. I remember their Ming one, which I was super into at the time. Like, I loved the design for it. They were charging like almost $1,000 freaking dollars for the damn thing. And yet it said in their catalog, do not cut with this. Because the sword wasn't constructed to handle the rigors of cutting. The blade was sharp, but the construction was not sturdy. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Then they came up with their Tai Chi Practical Den, which again was just for practice, but the blade was just sharp enough so that you could do some light cutting with it. And I did. But I could tell that it wasn't really what it was made to do. I actually had to go, I really wish someone hadn't stolen that sword, or I'd show you guys. I actually modified the grip and the internal things in there so it was sturdy enough to be able to do some very light cutting. Then I got the Adam Xiujian, which is great for practice and not much else because they ain't sharp and the blade's a little too narrow. And I started like, when are they going to start making gen that actually, you know, are real? You know? And then they finally came out with the Scott Rodell one because I could tell he was starting to get freaking frustrated at the fact that there's no, like, you know, affordable version. So he came out with his, and it was great. And I was starting to think, okay, maybe Hanwei will finally stop discriminating against us Kung Fu guys and start making us some decent cutting weapons, because they worked with freaking Scott Rodell and he showed them that it's possible to make these freaking things, and they made them, and people were buying them, and they're cutting and they're performing, and great, let me see if they're going to start making more of these. And then they came out with this freaking thing, and it is dull just like all the other ones. This is when I gave up on them. I was just like, I'm done. And this is not the only one. They've come up with at least 2 other gen as well that they look okay, ain't sharp. They're just practice swords. I don't understand what the problem is. Like, this just looks like a fancier Adam Sue gen, to be honest. Even the blade construction's about the same, except it's just slightly wider. But other than, I mean, they got the same design to the hilt. The fittings are different. But basically, as far as the overall feel of it and how it is, it's just another Adam Sudian. They're not selling the Adam Sudian anymore, so I guess they're just selling this. And it's like, okay, whatever. It probably is balanced well. They probably just decided, well, we'll just make more of these, but then we're not selling the Adam Sudians anymore. We're just selling these. And these just take their place. Okay, but why aren't you making any sharp ones anymore? Why you just... And they're, you know what cracks me up the most? They're a Chinese forge. You would think after a while a Chinese forge would start making Chinese weapons that are real. And they're not doing that. Somebody please give me an explanation for that one. I don't get it. But yeah, that sword pissed me off when it first hit. When I first saw it, I'm like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Let me see the... No. Oh, man. Oh, and then there was this one, which I think, yeah, Cold Steel was putting this one out, even though they didn't make this. They got this from a different forge, and I forgot the name of the forge. It started with an H. But they're the guys who actually made it, and Cold Steel is basically like selling it under their name. And I remember for a while I really wanted this, and I still do like the design, but not almost $600. Nowadays you can get something like this, similar, you know, blades, similar fitting, similar quality, for you can knock at least $200 off the freaking price. Maybe even more than that. Like, well, I take that back. I'd say about $200, $250 off the price, and that is more like what you could probably get elsewhere for sort of this quality. And I know somebody's going to try to challenge me on that, and I'm just going to say, look, I've seen stuff on the market. You're not going to be able to convince me otherwise. And then there are these guys. I basically was told to stay the hell away from them. And from the Iron Tiger Forge, I was like, there was somebody who... Earth, Wind, and Fire swords? Yeah, oh, by the way, Aiden, thanks for coming up with a name for that. 1-0 swords, that was it. 1-0 is the one that made the Dynasty Forge. Yeah, yes, you are absolutely correct. Thank you for reminding me of that. Evie Chan is asking, what about those Earth, Wind, and Fire swords? I'm not exactly certain what you're talking about. Is there a forge called Earth, Wind, and Fire? Or are you talking about those circular wheel ones? Because I know there was those weird circular... weapons. I wouldn't necessarily call them swords. Hold on. It's time for me to start looking up the weird Kung Fu weapons. I'm spelling things wrong. Yeah, these, right? Tell me if, you're talking about this right here? The Wind and Fire wheels? I will wait for your answer. Well, I think I'm about done going through these. I think you guys got an idea of what I look for in a sword and what I think are crap, what I think are good, both subjectively and objectively. And I need to start winding things out because my throat's beginning to feel it. I didn't even finish my muffin. Chakrams. Well, these aren't exactly chakrams. These are, I mean, they look like chakrams, but they're, actually, you know what? They probably freaking are. The Chinese probably just adopted it for whatever they're doing. But these are one of those weapons that I like to call the non-weapons, in the sense that you will sometimes see certain schools train with them, but the movements that they do with them, there's nothing distinct. I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. There comes a point where you'll start seeing certain Chinese martial arts schools start just like adding weapons to the curriculum that their style may not necessarily have ever used to begin with. Probably because the person training there might have like trained at other schools before he's settling with one style, so he might have picked it up, or they just added it to the curriculum just because to add yet another weapon. The forge's name, something like Earth, Wind, and Fire. Are you talking about the art of Fire and Steel or Iron and Fire? You're talking about that company? I forgot it. Yeah, the Art of Fire and Iron. Are you talking about these guys? I know they have a Facebook page. And they've been churning... Tai Chi fan. Yeah, the Tai Chi fan. Boy, do I have things to talk about with that. But yeah, Evie-chan, I think you might be talking about these guys. The Art of Fire and Iron. That's the only thing I can think of that sounds kind of similar to what you're talking about. They've fairly recently popped up. Multiple privacy issues. Shut up. I see it. They've been growing. They've really been blowing up lately. Yeah, that's them. Okay. I was going to say I have mixed feelings about them, but that's not exactly true. Here's the thing. I think that from the pieces I've seen and from the stuff that Scott Rodell has told me, I think they make fantastic swords. Absolutely fantastic pieces. These guys seem to go out of their way to make really good representations of the swords that they make. That being said, there was a certain stunt that they pulled when they first came out that put a bad taste in my mouth. And what that stunt was they were going around like on Facebook and I think on email basically saying that other forges weren't as good. And the forges that they were saying that about, I knew were good. Like they basically were saying, oh, we know how to make accurate, pieces and the other guys don't. Like, we got it right. Like, and the funny thing is the people that they were pointing at were known for making really good like they've done the research and they've actually done it. And they actually started out kind of copying off of the other forges first with inaccurate pieces. Like this one right here is what I'd say is a really good example of what put a bad taste in my mouth. This piece, I know for a fact they would not have freaking made if it wasn't for LK Chen. No one was making these before LK Chen popped up. No one. Everyone who was making a Han sword was making, the Han Wu knockoffs that we see all over the place. Then LK Chen comes out and makes their reproduction that they were constantly, refining and redoing to make it as accurate to the real thing as possible. And then these guys come up and they start copying it, and then they go, oh yeah, by the way, everybody's copying us and we're better than them. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That put a bad taste in my mouth. Now, I don't think they're doing that anymore. I'm not trying to say that, oh, well, these guys pull that, don't buy from them. That's not what I'm really saying. Again, this goes right back to the type of crap that people pull whenever they're trying to make their names known, but I think that they could have done it in a classier way. Because they've gone, look at some of these pieces. These are beautiful freaking pieces. But I honestly feel that, I really honestly think that they wouldn't be they wouldn't be out there if it wasn't for a couple of other companies, LK Chen being one of them, doing it first and doing a good job of it. Now, I think these guys are doing a fantastic job themselves, but I'm finding it look at this one. We know who put out a piece like this first, right? Am I wrong for pointing out that somebody else had already put out this piece? Or I'm just saying. Now, if they're trying to say that theirs is a better representation of it, I wouldn't necessarily know, but I do know that other people who have had the other version of this have all said it handles great, it's put together very well. And I'm looking at the fittings, I'm looking at that, it looks pretty much exactly the same. So I don't know if these guys are trying to say that, oh, ours is more accurate. How exactly is it more accurate? It's the same fittings, it's the same blades, whatever. I'm starting to overdo it. Again, I think these guys, if Scott Rodell, point blank, is saying that these guys are legit, that's all I need. Scott Rodell has handled so many antiques, so many swords. He's dealt with so many companies, and he would be like this, like for a while, like way before I started getting swords, like real swords myself. I was like, he actually used to be in different sword forums, and he used to, like, on his own website, he was talking about certain sites, and he was reviewing swords. He was doing early sword reviews in text a long time ago, way before I started like doing stuff. And he would like, oh, this forge sucks, this one's pretty good. And this was back before when you couldn't even get a decent Chinese sword unless you were willing to spend $500 or more. He's been in the game, not just teaching martial arts and training swordsmanship, but he's been handling them for so long that when it comes to his opinion on what's good and what's bad, I don't second guess him. No way. He knows what he's talking about. So if he's recommending these guys, I'd say, yeah, go for it. I mean, there's a couple of pieces, like, as much as I know that they wouldn't have made this if it wasn't for LK Chen, I'm still kind of curious about it. Simply because I like the shape of the hilt. So I'm like, I wonder how that one handles. I'm not, willing to spend over 2,000 euros for it, but I'm curious. This one was going for 540 euros. Again, we know where. Let me just keep going there. But I do love how beautiful the piece looks. They make beautiful looking swords. And another thing that I got to give them is that they go all out with the fittings. They really, yeah. Scholar General just said the same thing, that they put a little bit more focus on their fittings than many competitors. Yes, they do. And they are making weapons that I don't see other people making. Who's making whips? The steel whips. I don't see anyone else like making as many of them. And look at this one. One here. Oh, that's more of a melon hammer. But who's making those? Only they are. So this, at least, I'll give them that. They seem to be like really focusing on, we're going to be making not just Chinese swords, but just Chinese weapons. Like, look at this spearhead. It's a beautiful piece. So I don't want to keep going around in circles on this. I think, from what I've been told, from what I've seen, I think they're a damn good company. And they've really blown up over like the past year, like the past few months. Like, they used to have like a small offering. Now I'm just seeing beautiful sword after beautiful sword after beautiful sword. And again, Scott Rodell is endorsing them. He's even, I believe, getting a couple of pieces made under them. Or actually, he's working as a consultant on certain pieces, which is probably what's helping them to get some really more accurate ones going. If you got Scott Rodell behind you saying, oh, by the way, you need to make it like this, damn, that's a really good consultant you got right there. That's solid advice you're getting right there. So yeah, I think this is definitely a good company to watch. I get the feeling that these swords are really, really good. It's just, I remember when they first came on the scene, that one stunt they pulled just put a bad taste in my mouth. But hey, we ain't all perfect, myself included. They had to put their name. I guess they were just figuring out, like, okay, this is how we're going to get our name out there, I guess. But I mean, I will give it to them. They make some great pieces. Look at this one. I don't see many people making this one out there. Like, this is a doll that I know I have not seen other companies make. Well, look at the, wow. I like the groove in that one. That's really interesting. That is really interesting. Okay, yeah, they do make some really nice pieces. And apparently they're not just making Chinese weapons. They're expanding all over the place. Look at this. You got your katanas, you got your, sheesh, who's making Jumanji Yari? I don't know any other people who are making Jumanji Yari. That's awesome. European weapons. Okay, and that's another thing. I haven't really gone into European weapons, but I just don't have time anymore. I've really liked this particular shape on European sword hilts. This one right here. Just something about that. And it's very similar to a certain Chinese design that I like as well, particularly on the older Han ones that I see on certain LKHN swords. Just something about the design that appeals to me. I can't explain it. I just like the shape. They got armor too. They're really exploding. It's making me wonder just how much. So all products are independently handmade according to research or original prototypes. Yep. King Cauldron, normal Chinese smiths. Now it belongs to you. Yeah. Yeah, they seem to be making some pretty good stuff. I'm just saying that one thing just had me going, hey, what? But whatever. That's my own thing. I'm not going to say don't go and get their stuff. I'm just, yeah. To another oxtail down there. I think I've done enough. I've harped on this long enough. It is now 9:17. I thought I was going to be done with this by 8. It is now 9. Now it's now 9:18. I need to start wrapping this up. But I hope you found this weird live stream I did to be entertaining. It just popped in my head for the past couple of days ago. Like, I wonder what it would be like. Let me just show them what it's like when I sometimes just do window shopping on swords and like my opinions on them. To sum it up, basically, I look for practical things first. The swords actually have to be practical and functional and well put together. The steel's gotta be, decent. I don't like them when they're too gaudy. I stay as far away from the super expensive ones as possible, partially because I just don't make that much money, and also because sometimes I really don't think you need to spend all that much to get something decent. Like, once you start going around 500, 600, 700, 800, that's when to me, that's prestige pieces. Now you're looking for something to impress. If you just want something that works, you don't need to spend that much. Not anymore. So I tend to look for things that are like practical. I like looking for things that, that have a nice aesthetic. And it's weird. My aesthetic tends to be, I like elegance with my swords. I like designs that are simple but elegant. If you're going to embellish, that's fine, because I don't mind certain embellishments. Like, this is probably the most embellished freaking sword that I have. And I mean, this is as fancy as I'm willing to go. But that being said, it's not so fancy as having me going, ugh. Like, I'm looking at this and I'm going, wow, a lot of work went into this. It's ritzy, but it's the type of ritzy that appeals to me, and it's hard for me to put my finger on why something like this would appeal. But some of the other designs I've seen is having me go, hell no. I don't know. It might be because certain pieces aren't too big. Like, I like the fact that this handguard is not super huge. Maybe it's also because I'm partial to dragons, and you got like a whole bunch. Well, technically it's not a dragon. I mean, it is, but it isn't. I want to get into it. But yeah, I like pieces that, have a certain amount of elegance to them, not too overstated, just enough regalness to, like, appeal. They have to have a nice balance to it, a nice heft to it, so that when I'm doing my drills, they go where I want it to go. You know what I mean? I can, like, do my stuff without the blade or the sword itself getting in my way. I do like spending a little bit more for an extra bit of beauty. Like this, since it's Sanmei construction, I've considered that, you're paying a little bit extra for more of the beauty aspect of it. But if this was mono steel, I wouldn't mind, because again, mono steel is it's good steel to work with. The Europeans have been using mono steel to make their swords for centuries. Worked out great for them. There's no reason why it can't work good for you. Yeah, but I tend to like elegance, and the more elegant the sword is, and I don't just simply mean elegance as in like really beautiful with like decorations, but also just elegant in terms of like simplicity. Like, it's slender. It's not huge and bulky. I remember Skull at one point said, "You just like swords with no hand guards." That was years ago. I was like trying to explain, like I was like showing them some of the swords. I'm like, that one's got an even smaller handguard than the other one. And I showed him another one, and you're just like swords. You're just like, as long as you just knock the handguard off, that makes you happy. I'm like, no, that's not what it is. But I do kind of like it. Like the more streamlined the sword, the happier I am. It's really weird. But yet the weird thing is, I also really happen to like European longsword designs, even though their handguards are like, freaking huge. Yeah, that tends to be my aesthetic. Like I like elegance, I like beauty, and I like them to be slender. I don't like them to be overdone. I don't like them to be too gaudy, and I especially hate it when the balance of the design is off. And if I look at a sword and I can instantly tell, oh my god, that's going to be a crowbar, I don't want to even think about it. I don't even want to look at it. And you saw some of the designs I was looking at, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, it's just no, just no. One more sneak preview thing. This is a sneak preview for a video that I'm actually planning on doing. I'm gonna go more into it in the actual video, but I was talking about the handguard and it reminded me of something. And I've touched on it before, but I really want to go more into depth now. You may notice that when I'm using these swords, I do my best to keep my hand and my fingers behind the freaking handguard. Because this thing is bad to flesh. My fingers are made of flesh. I don't want the sharp part to touch the flesh. At least not mine, right? But I keep seeing people doing this. And you guys have seen it too. You guys have seen this. You guys have seen this. I've seen it in movies. I've seen actual freaking instructors holding their swords like that. And it used to piss me the hell off. Nowadays, it doesn't really piss me off, but it annoys me. But the reason why it doesn't piss me off anymore is because I know why it's there. And it's not just bad practice. It's not just bad advice or not knowing how to handle a sword. It's because sooner or later, everyone's done it. And I'm not just simply talking about Chinese swordsmen. It occurred to me when I noticed that LK Chen was making a European sword. You guys might not notice, but they got a sword that they're calling the Sforza. And it's a European sword. And there's a ring guard in there. The reason why that ring guard's in there, why did I put the sword back in the scabbard? Is because that was when they were starting to put their fingers here. Just like we're seeing with some of the Kung Fu guys that we're criticizing. So now we're seeing the European guys doing it. In fact, the Europeans are doing it so much, it completely made them redesign their hilts. That ring guard would evolve into that complex freaking swept guards that we see with their rapiers and side swords. All because they were doing this. Okay? Why are people doing this? Control. If you're using a sword and you're trying to manipulate the blade to have point control, holding it like this gives you more control. It's not very safe, both because you might accidentally nick yourself, and also because if the other guy with the blade knows what he's doing, you're not pointing anymore. But if you're holding it here, now it's a lot easier to get the point there. Like, I'm pretty sure you guys, if you've handled swords before for the first time and you're thrusting with it, sooner or later you find out that it's kind of uncomfortable to have to, if you're trying to point that blade forwards, there's a bit of extra strain on your wrist if you're not used to it. You have to modify your grip for that. And the easiest way to modify your grip is finger. Now it's pointing forwards, much easier. Problem is, this, and that's another problem. Scott Rodell talked about this a lot. There are a lot of people who stick their finger out, and then when they stick their finger, look at where the thumb is. You're not even holding it. You're just doing this. It doesn't take much to just. You can hit the blade right out of their hands, especially if this finger's out to there. And then later on, I'm seeing in the movies, I've seen Master do this. They'll hold this here just so they can have more of a grip or control. But again, with your finger there, digit, gone. So the Europeans solved that problem by putting a ring guard here. So now you got that metal piece in there and you made this part dull. So now you're not cutting yourself. And in case they slide their blade there, it's going to somewhat protect your hand. But then later on, they realized that ring's not enough. So now we're going to put another piece of metal, and then another piece of metal, and then another piece of metal. And now you got the complex swept hilts that you see on there. All so they can just hold their sword like this. Those of you who've handled rapiers know what I'm talking about, because the rapiers have a regular cross guard in that complex hilt, but you put your finger over the cross guard, and then you got all that other crap to protect your hand. The Chinese never bothered with that. They never got to that point. Because again, these weapons weren't really battlefield weapons for a very long time. So they keep this here. But you still want to get that control. What do? Modern day practitioners do this, which I understand why they do that. But it's not safe. And the funny thing is, if they've ever paid attention, the solution was already built into their swords. Anybody figured it out? By the way, I'm going to show this sword here. And I want you guys to guess how this hilt already solves the problem of where to put the finger. Anybody? I'll give you guys a minute. Anybody can look at this design here and figure out, oh, that's where you put the finger. Oh, the curved pistol grip hilts kind of solved that. Again, that's true. That was another way they solved it. And if you notice with Chinese Dao, which became more popular weapons, their hilts do kind of go pistol-like to make it easier to point. Steve O'Devil says on the flat, which I've seen with certain long sword grips. Sometimes they'll hold it like that. Sort of, but that's really still kind of no. Even this, you got to be careful because there's certain Chinese motions where they'll just right there on the hand. Anybody want to guess what would be a good place to put your finger, and the fact that they already designed it for your finger to go that way? Anyone? This is the last thing I'm doing before I go to bed. I think Dark Chris kind of got it. I'm going to give the rest of you guys a hint before I give you the straight up answer. Let's look at the design of the hilt. Typical design that you see on modern Chinese swords from the Ming, Qing, and Republican era. You got your hilt, right? Right here. But you notice you got these metal bits here and here. You might wonder what... most swords, I've seen it in European swords, you see this in katanas, you see this in Dao, they don't really have this metal bit here and here. They just have the hilt, then the handguard, and then the blade. Got these metal bits. What for? Well, it used to be that these metal bits were a little bit more pronounced, so it felt a little bit uncomfortable to just simply hold it like that or to choke up. Like, you really aren't... When you use yen, this is a bad grip. First of all, I'm using a hammer grip, but second of all, you're not really supposed to choke up. Your hand's supposed to go here. See? Now if you notice, got metal here, you got space. So why is it important to hold it here instead of here? Because if you hold it here, and then you want to bend forward, but now you got to extend the finger. Oh my God, I got room. And Fredgard got it. Fredgard got it. The nook. Gee, the finger just seems to fit right there. If you're holding the grip correctly. If you're putting your hand right square in the middle, take your thumb, cover your middle finger instead of the index. Hold it here. Then boom, extend. No strain on my wrist. Finger is extended, but it's still protected by the hand guard. And I still got a good enough grip so that they can't just knock it out my freaking hand because the thumb and the middle finger are locked in place. And I can easily snap up, snap that way. It's there. My hand has room to maneuver without going over. It's not exactly the same as putting my finger here, but it's still control. That's the secret. That being said, you better have strong hands. This grip is not an easy grip to have. It's not an easy grip to utilize when you're first training it. Because, I mean, you could try this at home. Grab a stick or something if you don't have a sword. And first, hold it the way you normally hold like a hammer or something else, where your thumb covers over the index. It feels strong. It feels secure, right? Now put your thumb and your middle finger together instead, and give your index finger enough room to every now and then move, and you're gonna notice a little bit more strain in your hand. You gotta train your hand. This needs to be strengthened up a bit. You need to train it, because you're gonna notice right away doing all that manipulation where your hand's doing this a lot. All here is gonna start to hurt if you haven't really trained that way to hold a sword like that before. Where, like, this is pretty much the grip. And in fact, to be fair, modern day practitioners do this. Remember, they got that finger out there. The problem is they got it overextended because they're choking up on the sword just so they can get really close to the freaking handguard. And sometimes they grip, they're trying to cover the handguard as well, which, to be fair, is sort of similar to the way you would use a cooking knife. Like, this is not a cooking knife, but anybody who's done any sort of training with a knife will know that when you're using a knife in the kitchen, you don't hold it like this. You're not doing it in a hammer grip. You're not even doing this. Your hand goes up and it slightly covers the blade. You're holding it here, right at the base of the blade. Now you got more control. Anybody who's cooked will tell you that. Okay? Just right here. Snip, 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 snip. Like that. When you're holding the sword, other cultures that ended up coming up with those complex grips, those complex hilts, right? They were basically trying to do it the same way. Again, you're getting it closer to the base to have more control, but that leaves this exposed. The Europeans solved it by first putting a little ring guard, then covering up the ring guard and putting all this other stuff, and now you've got pretty much a basket over your freaking hand. All so that you can point it forward. Chinese instead were like, nah, just don't choke up. And then we'll just rest your finger right there. Boom. You're good. There you go. Next time, yeah, look at a lot of Chinese hilt designs. They got a lot of crazy hilt designs, but you're going to notice a lot of them either have a little nook where you could put the finger, or it sweeps upward just so that the finger can kind of rest right there. But this is pretty much where it needs to go. Just right here. And then when you're snapping it back up or you're pulling it back, again, the finger can just rest back here. But the thumb never covers the index. It covers the middle, just so that that index finger can extend just enough so that you can point the sword forward without too much strain. But if you got your hand further back instead of all the way over here, it can extend, reach up to the handguard, and go no further, so it's protected by that. That being said, one more other thing I need to mention, however, is that if you're fencing with this freaking thing and they're constantly whacking around here and you need this to protect your hand, you're doing it wrong. Yeah. And that takes a hell of a lot of training to deal with. But basically, if I'm fencing against somebody, they are going to constantly go for your hand. And that's actually one of the first targets you learn to go for. You go for the hand or you go for the arm, right? They're coming in for attack, you just step up the way, bam, then bam, right? But there are movements you do to not get your hand hit as you make your attack, your left exposed. Now they're going for your hand. You got to do stuff like this. There's a lot of motions that suddenly make a lot more sense. Like, what the hell is this for? Sometimes it's just a reposition, but many times it's like, oh man, like this one. I've seen a lot of people that do this. Oh man, a hand is exposed. They're coming for your hand and you dip. And this gets your hand out the way, but it might also nick theirs because they're coming in to get your hand. You just step offline, drop your hand so that their blade misses, but you're catching theirs underneath. Then if they move theirs out the way, you go back in. That's just one example. But there's a lot of motions you do where it's specifically designed to get your hand out the way. You're not depending on this to protect your hand so much. Really, this is more to keep your hand from going over the blade, which is why I get frustrated. It's like, this whole thing was to keep you from going here, and yet here you are doing this. You just defeated the whole purpose of this. And the secondary thing, of course, is to protect your hand, but the main thing that's supposed to protect your hand is your own movements. Your footwork and your hand and arm movements are supposed to keep your hand from getting hit while you're trying to either go for their hand or just simply stepping out the way and go for the body entirely. But usually the main thing is they make their attack, you step out the way or make a slight deflection, hit their hand or threaten their hand, they get the sword out the way, or they get hit and they go, ow, now body's exposed, dead, collect your money or whatever it is you need to do. That's basic Chinese sword stuff. So who knows? Maybe, in another time period, another timeline, they might later, the Chinese could have said, no, you don't cover the whole hand. Boom, we're safe. Maybe that could have happened, but this is how it developed. And this is why they have the techniques that they do. But yeah, I just went way off another tangent, and I probably I just gave away the whole video now, so I don't even know if it's worth making. But well, I'd probably make it a lot more coherent if I made it a strict video instead of throwing it at the end of this live stream. Well, that's pretty much it. I could take like 2 more questions and then I'm out. Oh, thanks, Steve O'Devil. Thank you very much for the $10. I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it. By the way, I feel really bad. I wanted to talk more with Scholar General because I always appreciate his stuff whenever he comments. Seriously, he puts up some really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. So, I am so glad today is my Friday. Well, Saturday, whatever. I mean, I know it's Sunday, but this is my first day off. I got today off, tomorrow off, next day off, and then back to work. Remember, this is not how I make my money. I do make a little bit of money off of this, but really my money is IT work. What's the Jianfa style that I train? These days, I guess you would call it Tai Chi Jian, because I've been focusing on Scott Rodell's online class, which I've been really bad. I was supposed to be doing it today, but I did this live stream instead because I knew I was feeling kind of tired and I wouldn't be able to do it. But once I wake up later today, I'm going to go back and do my drills. But I've been focusing a lot on that. Before that, I was doing Wudang Jian. And before that, I was doing basically like what you would call like long fist Jian, like the forms that you would sometimes see in Northern Long Fist. I was practicing those first. Kept doing that. And then when I moved out here for a short period of time, I was training at the International Wudang Academy over in Seattle. And I still wish to I'm hoping to sooner or later have time open up so I can go back to training with those guys, because that school is hardcore when it comes to doing sword training. It's probably the first and only Kung Fu school that I've personally ever encountered that they were like, nah, you're going to learn how to fight with this freaking thing. We're not just doing forms, we're going to be doing sparring, we're going to be doing drills, we're going to show you how this technique works, that sort of thing. Very hardcore into that. But then later on, when Scott Rodell's online classes had started up, I just dived right into it. From the very first days, I was just diving into that. As far as what level, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really know. I just do the forms and I just do the drills and that's it. Like, I've never really graded myself with it or whatever. I just, every class, I follow the class, I go through, I do the forms. During the week, I just go through all the training regimens for that, and I just keep doing it. I will admit that some of the drills I found kind of easy to do, simply because a lot of the movements are stuff that I've been doing for a while. Other combinations I found really, really interesting, but that's basically where I just keep on going. So, yeah, one of these days I really need to look, because I know that there is the whole level thing. Like they recently, well, not recently, it was a while ago that they had, Scott Rodell put out the actual training thing of you're at this level now, you're at this level now, you're at this level now. I just focus primarily on I just want to do the drills and that's it. Like, I don't even do the forms yet. Like, I know he has the forms class. I haven't even done those. I have access to those, but I haven't done those yet because I want to just drill my fundamentals until they're like shining jewels, and then I'm going to start going into the forms. So because I've just like straight up boom, 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 just do this, like just, I'm just going to, you know, do the drills until I know I can easily do it. Because I've been focused on hard on that, I haven't really been looking at anything else. But considering all the different combinations I've been doing and following the class and then just simply repeating it over and over, I've even been doing it at work when there's like nothing going on. There's like this iron pole that we got in the corner, and even though an iron pole is obviously going to be heavier and not nearly as balanced, I just do that to strengthen up my wrist, and I just do the same drills. You know, I'm pretty sure you know a drill that we always do, the water skipping one. Start here, boom, boom, arm, boom, that, and I just build up from the combinations from there. So it's like boom, 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 and I put a couple of Wudon motions in there, but it's usually just step back, arm, that, cross, that, step forward, one, boom, boom. Like, I'm just constantly doing that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again because I want to perfect that completely. And before moving on, it's the old school person in me that just believes in fundamental training before anything else. And granted, I might want to start moving on because I've been doing this ever since the classes started. But I'm really into like fundamental training. Like, that's just been my thing, to harden those and tighten that up. So, what was the sword I was talking about where I reviewed a bunch of swords and said it felt like it was talking to me? Cut. It was some kind of Japanese sword, but it wasn't a katana. I'm trying to think of the only thing I can think of that was a Japanese sword that I've one time messed with, but it wasn't a katana, might have been the nakamaki and I say nakamaki in quotations because that's what they were calling it, and it was basically built like a nakamaki, but it was a little too short to be a nakamaki, if that makes any sense. It had a red handle. Because the only thing I could think of was a red handle is there's the Hondo that I have with the red handle, and that one also, it was really long. You can tell it just wants to slice. But then there was the Nakamaki that it was like years ago, a Japanese sword called a Nakamaki, and I don't think they sell that one anymore. It was the Sword Buyer's Guide store was originally selling it, but I believe they discontinued it. I don't think they make it anymore. That being said, I think there are other places that are making Nakamakis, like a couple of forges here and there, that are a little closer to the real thing than that one was. Because that one, even though it was a nice little wicked looking weapon, and I did like it, but it wasn't... What was I trying to say? The blade was too short. Let's just put it that way. Like, for... an actual Nakamaki would have a really long handle and a pretty long blade. And the handle was almost as long as the blade was. And even though it was the same thing with this, the blade was really short, which would make the handle a little bit shorter. And even though, yeah, it looked like a almost full-arm weapon, it was pretty short. So, yeah. Talking about how good it felt. Yeah, that might have... I'd have to go back and watch my older videos, but I'm pretty sure it was the Nakamaki. Because I do remember holding it in my hand. I'm like, whoa, this thing wants to move. I'm pretty sure it was the Nakamaki. So, but yeah, it's discontinued. They don't make it anymore. Kind of wish they did, because there was a friend of mine who like fell in love with it the minute he saw it on the video, and he actually came over to my house and he was like holding it. He's like, I want that sword. And by the time he was ready to buy it, it was gone. And I feel really bad because he really, really wanted it. He really liked it. Even the size, he felt it was perfect for him. But yeah, it ain't around anymore. Though I'm pretty sure if you go to the right forge, they could probably make it for you. There's a couple of Chinese forges they will make it the way you want it. Like, I want it this way and that way and that way. They could probably make it for you. Like Xeno Sword, like honestly, when it comes to like, I would like you guys to make a version of this, you might want to check Xeno Sword first, aka JKOO Sword. They have a custom katana type thing going on, and they also have like, you can email them and go, I want this, I want that. I mean, the cutting sword that I got from them, I did directly contact them and say, can you change the hand guard to an Ace of Spades guard? Yeah, we could do that. So, if you're trying to get an akamaki like weapon, I ask them first. He's also really good for that adaptive hand training. Yes, I agree with that, Aiden. I really do. Still really real because the way I was talking about it. You're a big fan of movies about cursed swords. It might have just been that one. I don't know. Actually, if you want to talk about cursed swords, that very first Han sword that I got, I almost feel like that one's cursed because every time I like look at it or lay down, it's like, how come you ever used me yet? I got a funny story, but I should be going to bed. I should have been to bed a long time ago. But should I tell this story? I don't know how this is gonna make me look if I tell this story. But then again, it's not like I'm a YouTube celebrity, so it's not like I really care. Fuck it, I'll tell the story. Okay, so, and this is true. This actually happened. Okay. I gotta tell one thing first before I tell the main story, and it's the fact that that very first sword that first actual real sword that I got, that Hanjen that I reviewed so many years ago. And this was back when I was barely even knew what the hell I was doing when it came to cutting. But I was still basically cutting with it. It still has a sharp edge, by the way. That sword still wants to do damage. I had just finished cutting stuff up in the backyard. And I went back inside the house, and I'm wiping off the water with my paper towel and getting everything up. And normally I tend to be pretty damn careful when I'm, cleaning blades, because when they're sharp, they do damage to you if you're not careful. But for some strange reason, I still don't know whether if I, misread where I was putting my finger or if I had a slight lapse of concentration. But as I was going upward again to wipe off a little bit more water, I guess my finger slightly went off angle and just sliced right into my finger. Now, it wasn't that deep, but it was still enough. Ouch! Damn it! Fuck! It drew blood. Drew my blood. Never happened with that sword again, but I noticed from that point on, it almost felt like the sword is like, yes, now I've tasted blood. We can get some work in. Could just be my imagination. I don't know. But ever since that point on, I had no problems whipping it around. I've had people like, isn't that supposed to be a two-hander? Yeah, you keep whipping it around like it's one because it feels easy for me to do it. Like it just always flew in my hand at that point on. I tell you that one to tell you this. This was a few months after my son was born. This was when I was still living in Indiana. I had a neighbor who, the stories I can tell you about that neighbor, Jesus. She happened to have been dating a complete piece of garbage at the time. And they were always having screaming arguments. And sometimes it got to the point where sometimes I'm like, should we call the cops? Because it sounded pretty bad over there. But my son had just been born. And we had just gotten the kid to sleep. It's probably around 2-something in the morning. And suddenly they're at it again. Yelling and screaming and doing all this type of crap. And now he's threatening he's going to do this and beat her up and that and that and that. And so I'm hearing like glass breaking. And my wife at the time, my ex, she was starting to get worried. Like, this is sounding really, really bad. And I was really getting frustrated because I had just gotten the kid to sleep. My son was one of those kids that I make a joke that when he was born, it's true, he was born with his eyes wide open. And I always made the joke that he was born with his eyes open, and from that point on, I was constantly trying to get him to close him to go to sleep. It was always a fight. So I got the kid to go to bed, right? And now they're yelling and doing all this stuff, and he's threatening violence and all this type of crap. And I'm like, you know what? I've had enough. I've had enough. I just, without even really thinking about what I was doing, it was just pure instinct and just like, I'm like, I'll be damned if they're going to wake this kid up. Grabbed the sword from the wall, went outside. He's yelling at the front. He's standing in the front door. She's like doing all this stuff and stuff. And I just walked right over and I'm like, dude, shut the F up and leave now. And you got to keep in mind, like, I'm not that tall. I'm only like 5'7". This dude was like 6 foot something. And here's my short self coming over and like, you get the out of here. Keep the, I've had enough. It's 2-something in the morning. Get the hell out. So what the hell you say? I said, shut the hell up. I just put my kid to sleep. It's 2-something in the morning. She obviously doesn't want you here. Get the hell out of here. What you gonna do? What you gonna answer that? And at that point, my thumb actually went like this with the sword, and it went like that, and he actually saw the flash because it was reflecting off the light of the street sign, street lamp over there. And he looks down. He goes, "What? You're gonna cut me?" Is that? And I, without hesitation, if I have to, get the hell out of here. My son's trying to sleep. She obviously doesn't want you here. And I could tell on his face that he was kind of weighing if I was going to do it or not. And I guess the look I was giving him was telling him that I wasn't playing around. And he's suddenly just stuttered like, "Yeah, I remember this, whatever." And then he's like, "Yeah, we ain't finished. I'm going to talk to you later." And I never saw him again. But I still remember, like, at that moment when he was like, "Are you going to cut me?" There wasn't even in the back of my head going, "Am I really going to go that far?" It was more like, "Yeah, if I have to. You've brought me to this point." I don't know what that says about me. And I've never had an altercation like that since. But I find it kind of funny that that was the sword that I had in my hands when that incident happened. And it just so happens that that was the same one that actually drew blood from me. It's the only one that has. But it seemed like it wanted to get more. I don't know. Well, if you believe in that sort of thing. I'm not necessarily saying that this is what happens, but if you wanted to make a joke about he's got a cursed sword, that's the closest thing to, I guess, what I would say a cursed sword, because it's the only one that I've ever felt like, I'm going to have to pull this sucker out. So, yeah. And the funny thing is, to add an addendum to this, she's thanking me for profusely saying that he was threatening violence. He does this and that. He's always threatening her kids and that. I never saw him again. But later on, I found out from the landlord that they got together again. They just made sure to never be around when I was walking around the front of the house. I never saw him, but apparently he was still around. And then, which pissed me off because she was like, "I never want to see him again. He's this, he's that, and violent." And then about a couple of weeks later, the landlord tells me, "Oh, they're still together." I'm like, fuck these people. And then later on, they left. And then, sheesh, if I tell you about what... There's so much I could say about those people that I don't really want to get into. That's a whole other thing. But yeah. I rescued somebody from domestic abuse only for them to go right back. But I don't want to... That was a whole other mess. It really was. Actually, it's funny. The whole time I was living in Indiana, when I was living in that house, first in that neighborhood, later other neighborhoods, I would quickly establish myself as the guy who was really, really nice, but just don't mess with him because he's crazy and he has swords. Like, I know that was the vibe I gave off. Not that, I was like crazy yelling at people. It's just more like, how many people do you see sitting on their front step polishing blades? So I think that was enough. I've lived in places where I know people always try to act tough, but then they'd see me and they're like, "Good morning." Because there I am practicing in my front yard or sitting on my front step, just wiping the dust off and polishing the blades. So, yeah. And even now, like you're either in my room or I'm in the back practicing with a sword. I don't really practice in the front yards anymore because too many people looking. Yeah, I know that I'm kind of the eccentric weirdo type dude, so... And I also make the joke that I'm going to be the crazy uncle for my sisters, like my sister's kids. I keep making jokes like, once they get old enough, you need to send them to my house so they can start the training. Send them to my house for 6 months. I'll make men out of them. Like, you're not, leave my kid alone. That sort of thing. So every family's got the crazy / cool uncle. So I guess that's that's the title I'm going to end up with. Anyway, yeah, I've yapped on way too long. And then he asked another question that I feel like I need to answer. How about archery? Archery is one of those things that I really wish I could have gotten into, and I just never had the chance. I've wanted to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow ever since I was a kid. I've always loved them. I've always wanted to learn how to do them. I remember there was a while I used to even watch archery and like Olympic events. I've always wanted to learn. Never had the chance. And the sad thing is, I've known people who've practiced archery. Hell, one of the guys that I used to like do like sword sparring with, he's got a long bow. He, as far as I know, knows archery. Never got a chance to learn from him. One of the people around here, he bow hunts. Never got a chance to learn from. One of these days, I'm hoping to finally get the chance to do it, but I've never had, the opportunity to learn how to shoot a bow. I really would like to. I still got time, but whatever. I'm sorry. I really wish I did know. I really wish I could say more about it. I don't, honestly, the only weapons I really could say that I quote unquote know, and I say the word know loosely, that I use, swords, staff, and these things. These are really the only freaking weapons that I've ever really like messed around with and like learned how to use. So that's it. Let's see. I got another question here. I really need to get on. What's this? Are your parents? This is from Crabshell. Are your parents the type who lets you do whatever, or do they expect shit from me? How do I explain this without getting too much into my personal life? Okay. And this is going to be the last question, because this one I got to go into a lot of stuff. I'm sorry, but I just got to wrap this up. You got to understand that my parents are immigrants. My parents are Haitian. Okay? And because they are, they come from a different island, and they migrated here, anybody who's had immigrant parents or immigrant caretakers, they pretty much, I've not seen it otherwise. I've heard otherwise, but I've not seen it. They come to this country because they see it as a land of opportunity, and they want the best for their kids, and they want their kids to succeed where they felt that they didn't. Immigrant parents tend to work really, really hard, and they expect their kids to be able to achieve a high level. So yeah, because of that, there were certain expectations that were placed on me. I didn't disappoint them, say. All I will say is that my path ended up going in a different direction that they wanted originally. And they eased up, like in the beginning when when you're a kid and you're getting into a teenager and you're not necessarily doing things exactly the way that they feel that they want it to, there's going to be conflict. But later on, when I became an adult and they saw that, okay, the kid knows how to take care of himself. Like, I'm out there living on my own, I'm getting my bills paid, I'm holding down a job, I may not necessarily be going the path that they were wanting, but I was later on doing the best with what I had. And then later on I got married for a time, owned my own house. They say I'm raising a family, I'm keeping things, secure. Now, okay, nowadays my parents are pretty much like, okay, like they're proud of me. They're like, okay, you're holding it down, you're surviving, you're doing your thing. And plus now that I got into basically a career that I've wanted to do for a while and I'm able to support myself with it, they're like, okay, yeah, you're doing good. I'm not exactly like, parents, especially, immigrant parents, they got super hyped. They want their kids to be the doctor or the lawyer or the super professional. That's not necessarily, the path that I went, partly because my interests lied elsewhere and partly because, well, my own personal beliefs. I personally feel a lot of what people want, like a lot of times being successful really just means selling yourself out. And I can't do that. That's never really been my thing. This is part of the reason why my politics are the way they are, my philosophy the way it is, because I see a lot of what people think is successful or the way to live as a very corrupt way to live. I can go into that later. I've been meaning to kind of go back to the sort of videos I used to make where I talk about like my philosophy, politics, social stuff, and all that. But generally speaking, a lot of what people think is, oh, this is the way to be, and I want to be this successful, and I want to make all this money. And I look at that and I'm like, you don't seem to realize just how inhumane that life really is, how effed up that life really is. Like, if all you're doing is living to be materialistic, and you're living a way that is not just demeaning yourself, but also messing things up for other people, that's not the way to live. If the way you're living is sacrificing your humanity and ruining the humanity of other people, that's not the way to live. And I know that these days it is very hard to not live that way. We basically live a life where either you're exploiting someone else or you're being exploited, and usually it's both. And it's very hard to try to walk a different path. But I strive to try to walk that different path anyway, because I couldn't live with myself if the way I was living is ultimately, I hate the idea of being exploited. I know I'm being exploited anyway. There's nothing, if you're working a job, you're being exploited. There's no way to get around it. But I definitely don't want to live a life where I have to be successful, and that means that I'm effing over other people. I can't do it. I just can't do it. And opportunities have popped up where I could have lived that way, and it went against my ethics. I can't walk that way. So, yeah, I hope that answered the question. Part of the reason why I'm chill is simply because, well, it seems like I'm chill. Believe it or not, I can be neurotic and anxious at times. Like, I've had, some anxiety and things like that. But it's just that there's just too much BS in life for me to try to live a way that's going to make other people anxious or other people uncomfortable. So I try to be chill so that hopefully other people around me are able to be chill. Because there's so much in life that's trying to make you not chill. There's so much in life that's trying to make things unfun or uninteresting. You've got so much pulling at you from different directions, so much is messing up your energy in different directions. And so if I could try to live a different way than that, and if what I'm doing ends up making things a little bit more enjoyable for someone, even if it's something silly. Like, if you notice these videos that I make, I always keep saying, I hope you get something out of it and I hope you enjoy yourself. If even just my simple little videos where I'm just yammering in front of a camera and it's not even all that polished like the way a professional YouTuber does it, but if what I'm doing makes somebody go, it took us about the day and I'm less stressed, good. Because there's just too much going around. Look around. There's so much crap going on right now. We need a break. We need to take a break and remember what it's like to be freaking human again. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And yeah, I don't want to make a living selling short socks. Hell no. No way. No way. Nothing to do with stocks. Nothing to do with all this Wall Street BS. No way. A crooked thing to do. And yeah, I know, and yeah, Fred Garrett, I know you were being sarcastic, so don't worry about that. Living a peaceful life is super underrated. That is so freaking true. And again, it's not as if we all fantasize about being financially secure, i.e. rich, but the only reason why we fantasize about it is because we know that's the only way to be free. Right? Be honest. The only reason why we fantasize about being rich is because we know it's the only way we can be free. Because quite frankly, if you didn't have to be rich in order to just simply be a human being, you wouldn't care. Right? It's funny how many times I point that out to people and they stop and go, wait. Because at first, no, I have to be successful. Why do you have to be successful? So I can make all the money. Why? So that you finally get to rest and do what you want to do. So until you reach that point, you're not free. You're under someone else's direction, under someone else's orders. You're living for someone else because what you're doing is making them free. You're not. You don't get to be human. But if you can somehow get yourself off the cycle of constantly being exploited and being screwed over and stressed out and overworked and you're barely getting any sleep and you can barely do the things you want to do, now you got all the money. Now you're able to do what you want to do at the expense of someone else. That's no way to live. But the funny thing is, if you can somehow just get to live your life, you don't have to be rich. Really, to be perfectly honest, none of us really need to be rich or super successful in order for us to enjoy our lives. We're just not allowed to. Really. If you were able to live a life where you're able to, you work a little bit, you relax a little bit, you get to play a lot. And this is a video I've been planning on putting out, actually. The importance of play. If you're actually able to do that a lot more often, you'd realize suddenly you're like, man, you feel content, you feel happier, you get to do what you want to do. Again, you don't have to be rich to do that, but that's, well, idealistically speaking, you don't. But that's not the sort of life we live. This whole thing about you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta work, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. We're the only animals on the planet that live that way. And the funny thing is, if you look at older societies or you look at societies that are not caught up in modern ones, they don't work nearly as long as we do, but their needs are met. That's the sort of thing people don't think about. All right, enough. I'm lecturing. It's 10 freaking o'clock. I need to go to bed. I'm going to sleep. I am glad you guys are willing to stay with me for almost 4 freaking hours. I need to get to sleep. Sleep, it would be good. And then later on, some tea will be good. That's a hell of a lot more valuable. More valuable than money. More valuable than 10 legions of Sadaka. Anyway, you guys take care. I'm glad you were willing to stick with me this morning. Hopefully I was able to entertain you guys. Gotta get some rest. Take care. Thanks a lot. For those of you who missed the beginning, later on go ahead and watch it because I go into the sword that I unboxed and stuff like that. So, and I got the other videos I need to put up. So you take care. Have a good night. That's it.